on. Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, April 9th, County Commissioners Work Session. And we've got a busy day. We've got a busy 2 days ahead of us. We're going to launch right into this. And we've got upcoming regular meeting items off the bat. And up first, Black Hills Energy right-of-way discussion. John Peacock and G.R. Fielding are here. And John, I had spoken to the chair of the Woody Creek Caucus, Bill Dinsmore, who I invited him to come up and say a few words and join you if he would like, or at some point during this conversation whenever it's appropriate. But I'm breaking protocol to do that.
That's great. And we also have representatives from Black Hills Energy that would probably be more appropriate to answer questions and such that the board may have. And they're actually all lined up.
They're all here.
4 from the Woody Creek Caucus and 4 from Black Hills Energy right back here. So depending on what kinds of questions come up, either from the caucus or from board members, we will likely refer those questions to our representatives from Black Hills, and we'll let them decide who should answer those. So
we'll start with your presentation.
Yeah, perhaps I didn't really prepare a presentation, so just some kind of opening comments and such, and then we can have the conversation. So first, what's at issue here is a right-of-way permit that's been submitted by Black Hills Energy to complete what has been a significant project of extension of a gas line. This section is particularly affects McLean Flats Road and Smith Hill Way. Just by way of background, utilities in Colorado under Colorado Revised Statute 38.5.101 have the right to construct and maintain and operate their utilities, and in this case, for the gas company, the pipeline, along and under any public road in the state. And so that includes, and thank you for being here, John Ely, for any questions that may come from that. That right is established in statute. It's subject to conditions that can be placed by the county to ensure the roadway is usable after the project and to try and minimize the impacts of the project. And so that is the profile under which this permit request has been made by Black Hills. The county received the application from Black Hills in mid-February, February 13th. After looking at it, the county required that Black Hills Energy meet with the Woody Creek Caucus to inform the caucus of the project, given the scope and impacts on traffic. I was not at that meeting. I understand some of you were, and a lot of folks in the audience were obviously at that meeting. So feel free to correct me on this, board members. But my understanding was, as Black Hills was presenting the project to the Woody Creek Caucus, questions came up about other alignments and whether other alignments were investigated in order to minimize the impact on McLean Flats Road and Smith Hill Way. And at that time, reference was made to an inquiry that was made approximately, as we found out, 18 months prior by Black Hills Energy about the likelihood of using the Rio Grande Trail. That would need to be a decision, a final decision of the boards. The inquiry, to my understanding, was what staff would recommend vis-a-vis using the trail right-of-way for the purposes of putting the pipeline in. It would require approximately a 30-day closure, and at that time staff indicated is unlikely, or that they would not recommend closing the trail during the high season, and that was through our open space program. There are also two other properties that the pipeline would have to pass, and so as we learn later on, well, let me step back. At the Woody Creek Caucus, then that raised questions about why use of the trail was denied, and I think it's important for the public to understand, as well as the board to understand, that there was never a formal proposal submitted, but there was an inquiry about the likelihood of using the trail alignment. There are also other properties that would need to be crossed. After the Woody Creek Caucus meeting and some of the concerns that were raised, staff, my office, did two things. One, I directed Public Works to hold on issuing the permit so that we could explore the potential of an alternate alignment and whether our Open Space and Trails Board and ultimately this board would like to consider that. Really go through the process of understanding if and what kind of formal proposal was in front of the county. As we learned, no formal proposal, but we did sit down with representatives of Black Hills and said, what if the trail alignment were in play? What would that look like? And our understanding, and Black Hills can confirm this, but that the proposed pipeline would come up through Jaffe Park, then go on the Rio Grande Trail approximately, and I don't have a map for you right now, but we do not have this alignment on a map. It'd approximately go to the Sand District property on the Rio Grande Trail, and then it would need to go uphill to McLean Flats Road, and so it would need to cross the Sanitation District property, as well as open space owned by White Star Ranch HOA. And then the line would connect in at White Star and McLean Flats Road, and then would run along McLean Flats Road to Trintaz Way, which is one of the entrances to the Starwood subdivision. So it still would have required work on McLean Flats Road for a period of time. It would have likely saved 30 to 45 days of road closure as Black Hills went up the hillside, and would have required approximately 30 days of trail closure. So we did start to look at that alignment, and Black Hills, I want to say, was responsive. They are looking at options to potentially bring their project, instead of starting it at the bottom of the hill, start it at the top and work back down towards White Star in order to give us time to further explore the trail alignment as per the request of the Woody Creek Caucus. We started working on that right away. One of the things that we discovered pretty quickly, about 2 days in, I think, to these explorations, was that there's a protective covenant on the White Star open space that precludes this type of utility project from crossing that property, which effectively made the Trail and Sanitation District alignment ineffective or unavailable to Black Hills Energy. And so that really kind of took that option off the table. I think we had hoped when we set up this work session that we'd have some alternatives and on the table to explore and a process forward for doing that. Right now, we do not see an alternative alignment. I don't think Black Hills, I'll let them speak for themselves, sees an alternative alignment outside of using the road right-of-way, which they do have a right to. And so that, I think it's important to note that we did require Black Hills to go to the Woody Creek Caucus almost as soon as we got the completed permit. When we did hear the concerns and the conversation that came out of the Woody Creek Caucus, we did stop the processing of the permit in order to explore that. And those explorations showed that the trail alignment would not be feasible for Black Hills. And that is my update to you.
Questions or?
I have a real quick, just to clarify the state statute again. Pitkin County really, we have the authority to issue the permits, but we don't really have the authority to tell them where to put the line. The state statute's pretty simple. It's like one paragraph that pretty much says, can you clarify?
Well, Black Hills is a utility.
Might want to get on your mic, John. Sorry.
Oh, it was on. Black Hills is a utility. It's been my experience over the years that most utilities that we deal with, that we work with, and we get together on for various projects are motivated to take advantage of whatever they can to reduce costs in constructing of lines or transmission systems and things like that. But it's also been my experience that most utilities are willing to work with neighborhood interests, certainly the local government, to try to get a path reduced to an agreement such that it minimizes disturbance and so forth. And I don't think Black Hills is any different from their predecessors in that regard, or many of the other utilities that we've worked with. So under state law, what the legislature has established is a means to facilitate the expansion and maintenance of utility rights-of-way. And so they have created an express, or I should say an implied easement under county rights-of-way, state highways, municipal roads, such that utilities have a way to get to a service location, a property, and they can always use the road. And sometimes that road is a great way to go, and sometimes it's not. The local jurisdictions that have ownership or control over rights-of-way or highways, like Pitkin County, cannot refuse a utility's ability to use a right-of-way for constructing transmission lines or pipelines or whatever the utility is involved in. We can, however, require them to do their work in a certain manner such that the local population and the government, particularly us, doesn't suffer any injury, such that if a transmission line or a pipeline is put in the road has to be restored. And then we set up the standards and the criteria for that restoration so that the road matches what was not disturbed, and we have an intact road system. In addition to that, as a utility, Black Hills also has the ability to cross private property. They have the ability to negotiate and acquire easements, and they do that. And they also have the ability to condemn a right-of-way if that's necessary. So, Black Hills has a variety of options available to them, and I think that their participation here today is just a demonstration that they're willing to work with neighborhood concerns, the concerns of the local government, and trying to figure out which right-of-way is the best. So Black Hills, as a public utility in the state of Colorado, has many options available to them.
When it comes to protective covenant, say on the White Star open space, would that be working with White Star to change their covenant in the long run? Or if they, and that's a process that could be very lengthy, and I don't know what the outcome would be, but, or then condemn?
Condemnation is available to a public utility. What process Black Hills wants to employ or how they want to, conduct their business is up to Black Hills. The preservation of open space typically is accomplished through the recordation of a covenant. And typically the covenant works to restrict certain types of activities or use. For example, the county open space program, when we obtain conservation easements, it's typically a restrictive covenant prohibiting certain types of activity or development. Sometimes the covenant is expanded such that there is an affirmative duty to do certain activities, but primarily it's a restrictive covenant. So private open space property that's owned and controlled by an HOA, like White Star in this case, the same type of mechanism. So there is a covenant on top of property that runs to the benefit of an HOA, and the property itself is owned by somebody else. Or perhaps, I don't know what the particular circumstance of this property is. It could be owned outright in fee by the homeowners association. It's managed as open space with a declaration in place that states the HOA will manage it for the other owners within the HOA, the other private property owners, such that certain activities are permitted and certain activities are precluded.
Thanks.
Kelly had a question, then George.
Thank you. So I have two questions, and then when the time's appropriate, Greg, I just have a couple comments. So just to summarize, and what I heard from you, John, is that without the benefit of a formalized alignment along the Rio Grande, the estimation is that there could be a 30-day savings in the overall duration of the project, and then maybe another 30 days off of McLean Flats Road, which would run under the trail. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's 15 to 30 days, and I would caveat that because you don't know until you get into the ground, and
Sure.
I think Black Hills would probably caveat the timeline for that reason. But yeah, so anywhere from 15 to 30 days off the total time frame, potentially 30 plus days of savings of road closure, because the section that would be avoided is probably the most difficult to construct. It has the most jogs going
And you're
uphill.
talking about the curves, the hill climb.
But it would require approximately 30 plus or minus day closure of the trail in return.
Right, got that. And then either for our staff or for Black Hills, has anyone contacted the White Star HOA to assess any willingness to discuss the changes to their covenant?
We have not, because that would really need to be a relationship between the HOA and Black Hills. So maybe we'll invite somebody from Black Hills to come up and answer questions for Black Hills.
If you could state your name for us to start, that'd be great.
I'm Cliff Dick with Campo CPC. I represent Black Hills Energy as their project manager for this project. We have not contacted anybody from the White Star Ranch HOA at this point, basically because of that covenant. And chances are that they would probably not, I mean, it's not to say that they would or would not, but chances are they would probably not be receptive to that. As far as condemnation goes, we avoid that whenever possible because that tendency to upset everybody, not just that particular landowner, but everybody around there usually gets upset if we start condemning landowners. So we avoid that whenever possible. Plus the fact that we would also have to be able to prove that there was not another route that we could take to actually get that. I believe you can probably back me up on that. We would have to be able to prove in court that there's not another route that we could take to, avoid condemnation of that property.
Okay. All right, you're last, then I've got to get to George, too.
Okay, thank you. I just want to ask kind of a straightforward procedural question here about your ability to speak for Black Hills as a subcontractor, because we're kind of revisiting this conversation due to some information given from a different contractor at the
Correct.
caucus that I'm not sure had this level of authority we might want to
Give you a little background on this. So I was at one time an employee of the company. I have been in this area since 2001, and I was also involved in all three of the past pieces of this, which was this is the fourth phase and the final phase to make this happen. The first phase went from Trintaz down to the ranch at, I think it's Jobber Road now it's called, at that ranch entrance. And then we went from there down to the bridge. And then we went from there into the cemetery there, where we tie into the existing Aspen system. This is the last phase. It's a smaller piece of pipe. It can no longer support the amount of load that it needs to carry. So that's kind of the logistics behind it. My experience, like I said, I've been involved in all these processes of projects since their beginning, and that's kind of why they're asking me to speak for it.
Okay, so we can be confident that any questions we have about revisiting this alignment can be fairly answered by you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Sure.
George?
So the process hasn't been as clean as I would have liked to have seen. Even though we did have a public meeting, we had a work session on this. We were not aware that there was even a request or conversation with Open Space and Trails. And it would have been nice had we known that we could have explored these options early on, gotten the information out to everybody ahead of time versus trying to play catch up, which is unfortunate, but it's sort of a lesson to be learned. I certainly would not be supportive of closing down the Rio Grande Trail in the summertime for a month. Road closures are inconvenience. We've all dealt with the last 20 years, Highway 82 through the canyon, the roundabout, the Castle Creek Bridge. It's just something we live with. But my question is, in terms of traffic control, knowing that you're looking at a one-lane closure during the time that you're going to be working on the gas line, are you looking at, in terms of timing on that one lane, so knowing that we've got rush hour traffic from 7 to 9 in the morning going in and 4 to 6 going out, so to keep that traffic moving during those peak periods of time?
I'll let you take that one since you're giving me my instructions.
George, because we've been on hold with this, we've had a lot of conversations about the traffic control that they'll undertake. And what was represented to the board a few weeks ago is that one lane of traffic will be kept open at all times while they're working. To be able to get higher production rates, what we've discussed is being able to use a temporary traffic signal to be able to meter the traffic through this section at night. Once 7 a.m. hits and we start seeing our higher volumes, they'll take down the traffic lights, move them to the side, and flag the traffic into town, and that will have priority. The way that we write our conditions, too, is we give ourselves some wiggle room. If we find that sort of traffic control is not working, we can issue a follow-up condition upon the permit that alters the times or the methodology of the traffic control to try to react to the conditions that we are seeing.
Okay, so it sounds like we'll try to mitigate the impact of at least rush hour traffic to the best of our ability.
Yes.
This is part of our permit. This is what we do have some
Control
say.
over, yes.
This is where we
Yeah,
can.
and we're not putting the work crew out there until 9 o'clock. So even though we'll have flaggers out there to handle that morning rush hour traffic to keep them moving, the construction will not actually start until 9 a.m.
George,
Steve, can I just tag on?
Do you have a follow-up?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Can I tag onto that really quick? Because that was one of my points. I think it's a benefit for us in working with Black Hills, just so the community knows, is that I think that we're looking at more efforts to decrease the time for this whole project, what we can do to maybe work together to make it more efficient, and the other things like George brought up, what we can do to help negate or mitigate the traffic impacts as best we can. A lot of communities don't have that relationship with utilities. I think we are lucky to have that relationship, and we're going to work on that relationship so we can lessen the impacts that have been coming to our attention through the Woody Creek Caucus. And we are concerned about those. We were concerned when it came to us, and we were not comfortable having to do this, but it's something that appears to be necessary to have done. So we're really trying to reduce those impacts as much as we possibly can, and we appreciate that effort. And we're hoping we can, as things move forward, if they do move forward, we can continue to work on those issues or any new issues that may come up.
Steve?
Thanks, Steve.
So my question was about, for a portion of the project to speed up the timeframe of the parts that would most restrict, the parts that are right in the roadway, extend the hours of the crew actually there working to make it, instead of 1 month or whatever, make it a 2-week process so we get through that part. And then when it gets up into the part where it's off of the roadway on the edge of the road, then that could probably be a slower process there.
Yeah, so essentially, obviously the worst piece is this first 4,000 feet going up the hill until we get to White Star Road. And that's really where we had focused, trying to figure out how can we get there and not really impact this road. And really, because of where our station is located, which is right at the entrance to Jaffe Park, we have to get to that station because that's basically what serves everything for the entire McLean Flats area, and what's going to serve, as the system, the future system to help with Aspen. But looking at possibilities on the trail, there is one other possible option that we could possibly give you, but that would also require an easement from open space or from you guys on the trail up by Raceway, where the trail actually crosses Raceway Road. And we could, with an easement to build the reg station there, we would basically move the reg station from Jaffe Park up to the trail, and then come down the trail to McLean Flats and then go up the hill.
But what I'm asking is not moving.
Right.
I'm assuming that somehow we have to make it go up the road.
Yes.
But
And-
is there a way we can speed that process up?
Well, and that's kind of where he was going with time frame. So we would start work at 9 in the morning and work until 7 at night, which would help speed us up going up the road.
Yeah, I'd like to interject. My name is Todd Ellsworth. I'm the operations supervisor for Black Hills. And I just want to reassure you that we do have full confidence in Cliff from Campos representing us. I think also should be noted that GR had recommended that we already, to help us expedite our schedule, we normally will put this in at a 4-foot deep trench, top of pipe. And GR, to help speed this whole thing up, recommended that he approved that we could run at 3 foot. So just that gaining that foot throughout that whole distance is considerable amount of time.
That will speed things up.
So we've already worked with the county and trying to find ways to expedite this whole project for sure.
Okay.
Just real quick, because I know we have time limits here. Coming up the hill, the hill of curves, is there an unintended benefit of widening shoulder along there? Was there something mentioned as far as which I think is a positive because there's no real shoulder there?
There's one section where that's feasible, and once you get past Stevens Way and Lower Bullwinkle,
Yeah.
moving up that
That
portion of road, Black Hills has just submitted an updated set of plans representing that the pipeline will be able to move off of the road template, just off of the road, and in doing so, they'll be able to essentially key in the gas line, and then instead of digging it, they'll dig a few inches and then bury it to that required bury depth, and so that in turn will give us
A little more shoulder
a little
through
bit
there,
more
which
shoulder
is
through that
beneficial
section.
because of all the use that comes down there, especially the bicycle use. Okay, so there's a little bit of unintended benefit coming through there. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you, guys. I'm thinking that you mentioned another possibility, which I feel compelled to explore. I kind of want to see maps and get some graphics, some visuals on what were we thinking, what are we thinking now, and what the possible alternatives could be. If we could get a look, John, can you pull up the screen for us? It'd be nice to see that. And then before this ends this morning, if Bill Dinsmore wants to come up, if there's something you want to come join us if you'd like, and because I think that the final part of this conversation will be what we're going to do going forward when a project of this magnitude comes to us. We just want to know about it sooner, and so we're going to change our process for that. And John will speak to that.
Our comments, my comments representing Woody Creek are really echoing what George Newman just said. It's about process and I think as we talk more about this, we're realizing perhaps the process wasn't as thoroughly vetted as it might have been. But we also, as we've iterated to you all before, we'd like to be notified as early on as we can about these processes, about these opportunities for us to chime in. It only took a couple of minutes after Mike's presentation to us at the caucus that we started to say, how come the trail? It looks like it's an obvious opportunity, and it appeared it hadn't been thoroughly explored by anybody. And so it's unfortunate we have to go through another work session of the meeting to do this. Our concerns at this point, not about the engineering and about the ability of Black Hills and their contractors to do it, but about you all to help us get a process that is thorough, and also we get briefed on it earlier on so we can chime in to the extent that it's appropriate. Sometimes it's not appropriate, but we chime in anyway. But
Right. It's important for all of us, not just Wood Creek Caucus, but for everyone.
That's our concerns.
Great. Well, thank you. I think John might have the response to that. Do we want to, while we're on the topic, if you could do that, and then maybe we can learn about this other opportunity.
Yeah. So no, I think those are fair comments, Bill. So thank you. The majority of right-of-way permits that the county receives are much smaller in nature. There are things like, water taps that are going to a house or those sorts of things. And it is typically is a long time between major projects like what we're seeing with Black Hills. But as the board is aware, maybe some members of the caucus, this year in particular, we seem to be seeing a number of them, like the fiber going up Castle Creek, which we've talked about, this project. And so staff does have it on the radar screen that we need to define, and this is for lack of a better term, so please don't hold it in the future, but something along the lines of a major right-of-way permit process versus a minor right-of-way permit process. We should also be exploring dig once type of policies so we don't have major infrastructure projects coming right on top of each other that impact the community. Our processes, frankly, we just haven't had that many, so the processes hadn't been developed, I think, Bill, to your point, to address maybe the major projects. They were more geared towards the 99% of what we see, which are the smaller projects. And so those are fair comments and learnings out of this process. So thank you, Woody Creek Caucus. And we're going to be looking at those processes. And to George's point, how do we have a better centralized process so that when we're hearing about, even just hearing, because it's not uncommon to get a call, what do you think? It's not an application, it's not a proposal, it's not anything that would rise to the level of the board because there's no request associated with it, right? But how do we start to centralize those types of calls and inquiries on major projects and get the right players, including engineering, open space and trails and community development around the table so that we can nail down a proposal sooner and make sure the caucuses have an opportunity to weigh in. So I don't know what that looks like. We do not have a time frame for improving it, but right now that is a learning out of this, and staff is going to be working on that.
Kelly had a question here. Thanks,
I just
John.
have a comment, if that's okay. No, I appreciate that last comment, John, because I think for me, there's sort of three things that came out of this. And, having attended the caucus, I was definitely taken by surprise on some of the information. And, you've addressed the need to have, I think, a better process for how we deal with this type of permitting, as well as, a culture of passing information along, treat it like a hot potato, pass it up the line, send it along, tell whoever you think you should tell. Internally. And then, I also think we need to, encourage some better partnerships with our outside groups. I've been here a short time. This is sort of the second time we've had a big community event or permit, if you will, come to us in kind of the 11th hour. And I hope that we can help facilitate maybe earlier conversations so that, we're not telling our permit applicants in short order to meet with the caucuses, that there is plenty of time to do that. So for me, those are sort of three takeaways of ways that we need to kind of get better at this.
Right. Thank you for articulating that so well.
Yeah, and Kelly, just so you know, you're right. I think this is a great, well, it's not really a great learning experience, but it definitely is a learning experience, and we will definitely be following up on that, and the sooner the better, because we don't know what else might be happening during this construction season that's upon us. But also, with our event permits, we do ask permits come in sooner. We need to start asking that for any of these right-of-way uses, that there's a better time frame, because the hardest position I think for this Board of Commissioners is when we get the permits where we're going to dig tomorrow, can we have the permit yesterday? And, and that puts us in a very difficult position, and then it puts the community in this response, why didn't we know? A lot of times because we didn't know, so that needs to be part of this process moving forward.
Cliff, if you could, give us the brief details on your new development, or whomever.
So it would go from where the trail intersects Elam Road or Raceway Road. Be a little further
That's
back. I think.
between Upper and Lower Bullwinkle.
Right in there. So right now we have our big 10-inch main that feeds everything.
Right at Smith.
Comes right down Elam Road. So we could take a new tap there, and we would have to build a new station there next to, which would be next to, back up to, right in there, right by the trail, right where it crosses. So we would have to rebuild the station there. And then we could run basically the new line, or actually we would end up running two lines out of there, out to McLean Flats Road, down the trail. And then we would be able to tie the smaller line, which is the existing line now that is feeding everything. That's going to go to a lower pressure, what we call our distribution system pressure. And that's going to continue to feed most of the McLean Flats area except for Starwood. Starwood stays off of the higher pressure system. But that would save that lower 2,000 feet of traffic issues.
On McLean Flats Road. Is that the lower?
Now, we would still have to, at this point, go out on McLean Flats to get the rest of the way uphill.
Mm-hmm.
But that lower 2,000 feet is actually the worst piece of this.
That's the narrowest.
That's going to be the slowest.
The steepest
it's got
section.
the biggest rocks in it. It's going to be the most difficult. We're definitely having to dig in the asphalt there, where, once we're out of the trail there, that's where we start to get a little better access up the road. Plus, that's about where we're going to come off the road, is just past the driveway there.
And then go on down up that side of the road.
And then we're going to go in the side of the road, which will get us out of that asphalt, which hopefully will speed us up some.
Mm-hmm. What's your time frame for? Is there a time savings then?
So
Certainly.
we figured, it's going to probably take us at least 20 days to come from the station to get to the trail. If we were to move that to actually impact the trail, would probably be 15 days for the trail itself, but we would have to, still build the station, but we could be off the trail, and allow people to get past us.
So the trail closure might be at the max a couple weeks?
Yeah, probably 2-3 weeks.
In the early part
I
of
was
the
gonna say
off-season,
beginning of the
or
season,
when would this happen?
It would have to be an approval first, because we would need easement to go down the trail. We would need a new easement for the station itself.
So we need to look at the practicality of that, but it could save us 20 days of closure on McLean Flats or Smith Hill.
And if it was early
Road.
enough in the season, if we were to start that on Monday, which we'll never get easements in time for that, but that's a.
Well, we can't just give them the carte blanche right now?
You can't do that right now, no. That would require, and I'd encourage the board in exploring an option like that. We'd need to have some public process around it so that you could hear from the community, again, probably from the caucus, trail users. You would also We'd need to get an opinion from the attorney's office about our ability to grant that easement. We haven't had that conversation, but assuming that answer is yes, and you'd have to go, I believe, through an ordinance process to grant the easement.
We're talking a month
it-
or more out.
No, it can be done a lot quicker.
You
Emergency.
start from the other end and
And we can, yes, we can start from Trentaz and work back in, and we would be willing to do that as well, if you wanted to explore this option.
So we have time to think about that one. Steve had his hand up.
It would be good, Greg, if the board wants to do that, to get some direction to staff today, because I think we're on an extremely short timeline still for you guys to go. We don't want to be at the seat again with folks concerned that we didn't provide adequate time for public comment.
Right. Steve, question?
Well, I like this option. If we are closing that stretch of the Rio Grande Trail, I think we should also be thinking about ways that we can have alternative bicycle route, which actually would be using the county road down Smith Hill and along Woody Creek Road. And we'd have to put up extra signage, probably just warning motorists there's increased bicycle traffic during this construction period, because if people are trying to get to Woody Creek Tavern, for instance, for lunch on a bicycle, they get to there, how are they going to get the rest of the way?
I would strongly encourage that we kind of get an idea of what the counts are. I'm not sure that we could be adding thousands of bikes to that road a day. That may not lead to the desired result in terms of traffic impacts.
George?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of going this route. It's a 20-day inconvenience. It's certainly going to be less of an inconvenience that we saw with the Castle Creek Bridge that went on for months and months and months. But to put in the summertime, starting right now, bikes are out on Lower River Road right now. I was on it the other day. Bikes are out there to put bicyclists off the Rio Grande Trail going down Smith Hill, where there's a lot of truck traffic. It's just going to really increase a safety hazard. And for a few weeks, I'm not going to support that.
Question, and we're certain the Rio Grande Trail would be closed to bike traffic completely.
We
You
would
couldn't
have
work
to
off
go
the
right-
side enough. You'd be shutting it down.
Yeah, it's not wide enough to have.
Share the road.
Yeah, to share it, basically, because you got your track hoe and you're going to have a truck probably in there. We're going to have a welding truck as well, the pipe strung along the side of the ditch and the ditch. So essentially that whole trail would be closed while we were working on it.
And then there are absolutely no other bicycle detour options than following McLean Flats Road that we could contemplate.
Straight down the hill.
Well, no, it's either straight down the hill or it's through, I don't want to, I don't want to say something I don't know about, but through the subdivision or across the.
Racetrack road.
There might be another option that we should look at in the
So
short.
that's a
yeah.
private road, and again, that would require Black Hills to get permission to do that.
Right, okay. Looking for a suggestion regarding moving forward, we have to give direction to our staff. I would say that I'd like to see staff look into this to see if there might be a creative solution that hasn't come up in the last 5 minutes. But we also, I think we have a clear idea of where we stand with Black Hills, and I'm hoping the Woody Creek Caucus understands now the situation we're in. And we want to certainly get this thing moving forward so it doesn't go any longer than necessary.
Yeah, because if we get started on time on, well, actually Tuesday, one end or the other, at least we'll stay on schedule and
Right.
hopefully get this completed
Right.
Hi, my name is Mike Moore. I'm actually the spokesperson that was at the Woody Creek Caucus for Black Hills Energy. In 2015, we worked with Open Space in the Woody Creek area, and what impacted the trail, we waited until after Labor Day, where obviously traffic dropped off considerably. But I think I can speak for all of us here that we would respectfully like to get at least started, if you want us to start at Trentaz and then explore this. If that's what you wish for us to do, that's fine. I have not spoken with the HOA of White Star. There's a small handful of people that would be a constructible route along the Jaffe part of it. This would probably be a better option with less impact. Your first 2,000 feet, of course, as Cliff has mentioned. But if that would be a consideration of you, that would be most helpful.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate, Mike. Thanks for that.
And in the
We better-
evolving information, Gary just informed me that AVLT and the county do co-own that easement
So we have to
along
get
with
permission
the
from them
HOA. So you'd
also.
have to get AVLT, the county, which would be you guys. That's easier to know where you're at, as well as the HOA. And Gary just informed me of that.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, we don't have time to solve this one today, but we can give direction for you to pursue these and look into it. Is that enough?
So, yeah, so the direction, I think, would probably be adding a condition to the permit to be issued as far as a range of the starting point and what's going to be worked on first in order to give time for Black Hills to, really explore this alternative route. We'd obviously need to see some more. My sense is that there needs to be more work done on this to really answer the questions that the community and we'd have before bringing back a recommendation to the board.
Great.
Yep, I think that's great. If nothing else, there's a benefit to further exploring that and having, discussed potential options. And then we'll see if that changes, if, which project ends up being better at the other end when you get there in September, October.
Okay.
Or August.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that was new information to us, too.
Right, I know. You can see the heads nodding and shaking, and I'm looking around the room. It's like, well, okay, we're going to need to spend some time with this. But thank you all for coming. I think we have clarity now. And moving forward, we're going to get more clarity on where this is going, and we know where it's going to end up if these other options don't come together.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you
We're
for your
gonna- We're going to
willingness.
move on to our next topic. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, John, happy birthday.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, up next, Charlotte is in the room with, we've got Citizen Board Renewals 2019.
We need to talk to Black Hills.
Okay, guys, we're going to keep it moving here. Need y'all to clear out, take it to the lobby.
You always have great ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's called making sausage in real time.
Good morning.
Now, what are you going to throw at us, Charlotte?
Hopefully nothing that difficult. Charlotte Anderson from the administration office, here to talk about citizen board renewals.
Hi, Charlotte.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hopefully you had time to review. I'll try to make this quick. We do need some decisions on the new applicants and renewing applicants. So I kind of laid that out in attachment 1. We have the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board. I'll just let you know that we received another application this morning. So hopefully he will reply that April 16th is a good time for him to come for an interview. We also have Christopher Wheatley scheduled for that day as well. So we probably won't make a decision on Healthy Rivers and Streams today. We'll wait till all of those are interviewed. I'm guessing that's the way you want to go. So we have in the Election Commission, Melinda Patterson did renew, but we also had a new applicant, Ashley McGee, who is interested in serving there. So we'll need a decision on whether you want to go with the renewal or the new applicant. Then Open Space and Trails, Howie Mallory has come before you and interviewed for renewal for District 2. And then Cliff Weiss and Zachary Matthews have also appeared before you to renew for P&Z. We do have Jeff Seltzer, who has applied for the retirement board. I have not heard back from him on whether he can make it April 16th, but that is ahead of you as well. Then on attachment 2, the renewing applicants are listed there. Those are all the boards that don't require a renewal interview. And so we have Yasmin DePactor for the Animal Shelter, James Rifkin for the Board of Adjustment, Wayne Stryker for Board of Appeals, again, Melinda Patterson for Election Commission, Lisa Baker for the Financial Advisory Board, 2 members for Pitkin County Library Board, Barbara Smith and Judy Wrigley, and then 2 members for Redstone Historic Preservation Committee, Dorothea Ferris and Nancy Crummy. And Telecommunication Advisory Board, John Emmerich has also decided to renew his position. And there's a list of resignations, and I think that's it.
Great, thank you.
I
Patty?
am comfortable with renewing the renewals applicants. I do have a point that Kelly and I learned during the campaign in November in Redstone. If we could, I don't know who would be the best person to contact, Susanna Reed. We heard just from one member of the community that they never know what the Historic Preservation Committee is doing. I don't know if the meetings are posted or if there couldn't be some more involvement with the community would be great up there, because there's some people kind of feeling like, what are they doing? We never hear from them. So if we could kick that in a little, I don't know what ideas she might have. I think that would be great. And on the people who resigned, we send them nice thank you letters, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm comfortable with that, and as far as Healthy Rivers and Streams is kind of off the table right now, because we have people
2
who
more
are
applicants.
interviewing. I'm comfortable with reappointing Melinda Patterson. We did have quite an interesting discussion with Ashley about, we want to keep you somewhere, so I'm hoping she's pulled up the other committees on the website, and we'll be hearing from her again, because she's got a lot of passion and involvement. Did you hear something from her?
No, but on that point, I just wonder, because just sort of based on that conversation and then I think she presented to me as a bit of a generalist. I wonder if the grant review committee might be a good
Right.
fit for her.
Could make a suggestion to her. I think she'd
Yeah.
be enthusiastic.
You could reach out when you,
And we,
sure,
and we
that'd be
were
great.
we were straightforward with her about, I didn't think the election commission would be a great fit because they only meet when called.
And Healthy Rivers and Streams is so in-depth.
So if she is interested, should we prepare the resolution with her in that
For the
grant review?
grant review,
Yes, why not?
we need to advertise that if there's space for other people that might be interested.
We are advertising currently.
So,
Already advertising it.
This
We
is,
should-
I'm sorry, this is a
Sorry,
grant
George.
review committee for the Healthy Community Fund.
Right.
I'd like to have a better conversation on that before just appointing someone. That's a big time commitment and in-depth discussion, giving out a lot of money.
she'd come back
That's
in
what I
and
wanted to
Conversation with
check,
her.
because I wasn't
Yeah.
sure.
she'd come back
That's
in
fine.
and talk with us, and I think we
bring
need
her
to
back.
finish the advertising anyway, but.
Okay, I wasn't sure what the direction was.
I think, I'm really comfortable with reappointing the people who are applying for doing it again on all across the whole board.
Okay.
Planning and zoning, open space and trails, and then various ones. In terms of Ashley, I was thinking she might be interested in the senior council because she said she had volunteered at the senior center on her resume.
Okay.
She might be interested in the
Weed board.
the weed advisory board or one of the others. I think we should approach her and just give her some different options. It's up to her then to decide whether to apply for something or other, and then go through the normal process
Okay.
of us vetting and seeing if there are other applications for the grant review board and, for the different things. But I would leave it up to her, but I think we should
Encourage her.
approach her and say, these are places that we think, we as a board think, you might be interested in this, or this. Take a look at them and then reapply. But I don't think I wouldn't want to appoint her to the Healthy
Right.
Rivers Board. I don't think she's qualified compared to some of the others for that position, so,
Okay, I'll reach out to her then.
yeah.
Right. You think you have your direction going forward?
I think so. Let's see. So you're good with all of the renewals, and then we'll hold off on
Healthy Rivers
Healthy
waits
Rivers
till-
and Streams.
Also, I just wanted to make sure that the public knows that we're deeply appreciative of everyone who served, and the resigning members are Patrick McAllister, Board of Adjustment, Sue DeCampos, Citizen Grant Review, Financial Advisory Board, Demi Angelova, Healthy Rivers and Streams, L. Taylor, P&Z, Jeff Conklin, Weed Advisory Board, Christy Blish. Just our deepest thanks to them for participating in. And we are looking forward to more community members stepping forward to get on these committees,
Okay,
advisory boards. Anything else on that? I think we're good.
all right, I'll prepare a reso for tomorrow.
Great.
Great, thank you.
All right,
Charlotte.
thank
Well
you.
done. That was record time.
I'm going to run to the restroom.
Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute break, if that's okay, Grassroots, 5 minutes. We're back. It's 11:01. Staff community presentations. We've got Chad up, revised aging well plan update. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Chad Fedowitz. I'm the manager of Senior Services. And I just wanted to come today to present a kind of an outreach plan to gain some input around the revision of the aging well plan. So just a little bit of background. Back in 2014, many different individuals and partners came together and wrote the Pitkin County Aging Well Plan or initiative. And in that plan, it kind of said that it went through 2017, and then after which it would be revised and updated. So we're a little past that point, but in the middle of 2017, Pitkin County became the 8th age-friendly community in the state of Colorado. And so with that, and more recently, December, I believe, or November of 2018, Colorado as a state became the 3rd age-friendly state in the country. One of the last kind of prerogatives of Governor Hickenlooper at the time. And so I kind of felt it's a great opportunity with that lens of age-friendly verbiage and push, particularly at the state level and nationally, to look at our Aging Well plan and revise it within the lens of the ARP and World Health Organization verbiage, particularly what they call the 8 domains of livability, which is very similar to the social determinants of health that some are familiar with within human services or public health. So right now, staff has been working on a staff draft of that revision, and what I presented today in the memo is a kind of rough draft kind of outreach plan to gain input both from or including some of the original steering committee members from the original plan in 2014, along with the public, along with other municipalities, and really, anyone that would like to provide input, and after which we will compile all that input and analyze it and look for kind of common themes and different things of that nature, and then revise the plan more, and then come back and present the quote final draft from staff and all this input gained to the Board of County Commissioners with hoping of approval and adoption. And then after which we would present it, my plan is to present it to all the municipalities within the county for similar action as well the public of here's the final plan and then start the work, which will continue and has been continuing anyway. So that's it in a nutshell.
Great. Steve? Sorry.
Well, first of all, I'm glad you're presenting this week instead of last week.
So am I.
Because we almost had a quorum last week, but it would have only been 3 of us here.
Yeah.
Now, today, we get all 5 commissioners here.
Right.
I participated in the creation of the original plan.
Yeah.
And it actually was a couple of year process
Right.
where I wasn't a commissioner yet when I was sitting with all dozens and dozens of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a great opportunity to have invite them all to participate again.
Yes.
And it's partly just an educational thing. They can see what they worked on before, how it's evolved.
Right.
And there were so many great ideas from that group. So I think that's a great step to take to get the community involved for their education and their input at the same time.
Yeah, I have had a few conversations already with some original steering committee members, and they've been really wonderful and really great insights, and very supportive as well. So just starting some of those conversations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Patty?
So one thing that I had when you talk about on your agenda item summary, you talk about becoming a community where people of all ages are supported and thrive. I don't know, it would be great if we could get some input from the younger generations as to how they feel about getting old in this community.
Sure. So,
And I don't know, that's kind of a hard outreach, because I
It
know
is
we
a
get a
hard
lot of
outreach.
seniors that pay attention, but I don't know, it might be interesting to see if we can't get some of that. Maybe speak with the Aspen Young Professionals or some of those groups to see if we can't get some of that younger demographic.
yeah, my hope would be, you're absolutely correct, and I use that phrasing on purpose. That's what ARP likes to use is what's good for an 8-year-old is also good for an 80-year-old. So everybody wants well-lit streets and sidewalks that you can walk down. Everybody wants safe crosswalks. Everybody wants accessible buildings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because you never know when you might go skiing and break your leg.
And you need that accessibility.
And then you might need some of that accessibility and et cetera and other things. So as far as these input sessions, obviously my main goal is reaching out to the older adult population. But if we're all lucky, we will all be older adults one day.
Well, some of us are there.
So I think it's really important to look at across multi-generations to gain that input and insight. For if you're 30 or 20 or you're in high school, what would you want to be able to age well, if you will, in the community and in the county? So my hope would be to outreach to all those different groups, and anybody would be welcomed and encouraged to come to these input sessions,
That'd be great.
regardless of age.
Be great.
Yeah.
Hey, Chad, I was thinking along those lines. You're talking about the young professionals, for instance.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what about the young lift operators and the ski instructors? And there's the classic thing in the mental health world. We talk about the aging out of people who come to Aspen with this great idea of their youthful experience, and then they find themselves in their 60s with few options. So maybe talking to that group now about aging well in our community and what does it mean for them, because they're the ones who seem to be quite at risk. Today, some of the people who came and lived that life, and you kind of run out of time, and where do you go next? And so it just seems that that's a good one. The other thing I wanted to add to this is what's good for an 8-year-old is also good for an 80-year-old. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings up the point that whenever one of these conversations comes up, I try to bring up our climate action plan.
Yep.
And that when we're having these discussions with the community, I think climate and climate change and resilience in that regard, and what does this older community think we need to be doing, it would be a useful, valuable part of the conversation.
Right. I completely agree. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else on this? Are we?
I just
What's
want to
next?
think it'd be interesting to see what comes back.
Yeah, and I look forward to it. Well, boy, what else we got? Is that it?
That's it.
Well,
Okay.
you can save this extra time for your next presentation. We give you credit.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks,
Make sure that's
Lindsay,
in
for
the
coming.
minutes.
Just a little side note, in yesterday's SAPCA meeting, Strategic Action Planning Group on Aging, there was discussion about taking the age-friendly community thing to a lot more communities in Colorado. And we're trying to figure out how to help facilitate that. But if we can come up with a really good plan, revised plan here in Pitkin County, we already have a good plan, but our revised plan, I think, will be even better.
I mean,
And
that
then
would
if
be-
we might be called upon to be taking our show on the road to the different parts of the state and sharing that with other communities.
That would be a really great goal, and I think that's something we could achieve. And I have been in discussions with other neighboring counties about some of the work that we've been doing. I know very recently, in the last month, Summit County became an age-friendly community, and I know other counties in the area are working toward it as well. Eagle County already is. But so I completely agree that, depending on the work that we do here, and we could share it across the state and assist other counties similar to ours or different as well, of working through the same process of how do you make a plan around aging that's suitable and appropriate for all ages, not just
Right.
older adults. So.
Great.
Great.
Well,
Good
thank you.
stuff.
Kelly?
Who are the 8 other counties? So we're the 8th in Colorado? I'm a little
Yes,
competitive.
that's
So
okay.
I want to know who are,
Let's see if I can name them off the top of my head. Boulder County, Jefferson, Summit, Eagle, Colorado Springs, Larimer County,
Fort
the city of
Collins.
Denver, Fort Collins, Frisco,
Wow.
and one other one.
Us.
Us. Yeah, there's more than 8 now.
Yeah, okay.
Kelly, you're talking about we're competing, we're trying to out-age them? What are
Yes, we are. Or outage
Age
them
faster?
well,
Not necessarily faster, though.
Well out each
Necessarily
them.
faster, but yes, there are many coming up. And now that Governor Hickenlooper last year created what's called Lifelong Colorado, which is very similar to, it's Colorado's version of age-friendly communities that he's hoping, I think what that initiative said is over, and Steve, I'm sure knows this as well, over 10 years to have 100 communities, meaning either municipalities or counties be age-friendly and have that designation.
It'd be great if we could get the 3 in our own county on board with that.
That's part of this
push.
as well.
Okay,
so.
whatever we can do to help.
And since we have a time, I just have did your gubernatorial appointment carry over, and do you continue that work?
Through governor to governor?
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, is continuing.
Yeah. Okay.
I know that there was an aging policy advisor to the governor's office. I've heard some unofficial things that person may have been appointed. I've heard no official word yet.
There is, the new aging coordinator is Janice Blanchard.
Yep.
And she was just introduced yesterday. I wasn't there in person, I was on the phone, but
I
she
haven't
was
seen any
introduced.
official word from the governor's office, but I do know that she was appointed.
Yeah.
Where's she from? Do we know?
Well, it was the organization. She was the founder and the head of an organization
What is it
that
called? She's in the
lived.
Denver area.
I can't remember the name of the organization.
I can't either.
It had to do with aging community kind of things.
Got it.
So as far as I'm aware,
You're still there.
that the aging at the state level is still a priority on some level. And between SAPCA, that Steve's on, and the State Commission on Aging, which is I am on, there's going to be momentum and push to address these different opportunities.
And then finally, my last question: how's it going in Redstone? With the-
Oh,
the
sure.
reach out there. I know that's a
So
little
Redstone's
new.
going very well. We're there actually right now, and so that's continuing, and really great feedback from the folks that are participating in that program and wanting to bring similar things that we're doing here at the senior center to the program in Redstone. So we're working at how can we expand, might not be the most accurate word, but bring similar things that we have here to Redstone as well. So it's going great.
Good.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we're really happy.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yep.
Appreciate the update.
All right.
Great, good
Thank
to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All
Ted.
right. Thanks for coming in.
Of course.
Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes of extra time. John, do you have a?
Would you
Carol
like
was
to?
just outside the door,
Yeah,
but
she may
Yeah.
burst in any
I think
second.
she's waiting for somebody from the city
Oh,
too,
that's right,
but
coming
we
over.
could maybe knock out
Look,
future,
wait.
And look at this.
or they're here.
Okay, no, you're on deck, thanks.
perfect timing.
Good thing you guys stream it all.
Yeah. I sent you a quick email just now, and John probably did too. All right, so we've got Kara up, and we're talking about Census 2020 outreach, and you're joined by Philip.
Greetings,
Hi.
everybody. I'm Philip Sapino. I'm the long-range planner for the city of Aspen.
Great, welcome.
Good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
I think this is the first time I've met you.
Oh no, we marched on the 4th of July together.
Danced in the
I think maybe
fountain.
a couple of times.
We have
Oh, at
photographs.
that concert! Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
of course I
yeah.
can remember.
The time I had dinner at your house. No, I'm just.
Oh, yeah. I would have remembered that. I think we were at your house.
So we're here today, Philip and I, Kara Silbernagle in the manager's office, to discuss the 2020 census and the Roaring Fork Valley outreach campaign that we are just starting to collaborate on and kick off. So far, the city of Aspen and Pitkin County and town of Snowmass Village began, I guess, in January to meet very preliminary to look at what would an outreach campaign. We met with the U.S. Census Bureau and kind of just discussed what is the need as we look to the 2020 census for an outreach planning effort, especially locally. And so from that initial conversation is why we're here before you today. So just a little bit of background. The census goes back to, do you know which year?
I think it was 1796. It was called, so when the Constitution was first ratified, there was the direction to conduct a census, but the approach and the scope has been amended a number of times going back to the 19th century.
So needless to say, the census is very important. It happens once every 10 years, and it's a moment in time count, and it's the actual counts of person and dwelling units. Like I said, it's in the Constitution. It is separated out from all other entities and is very well protected as its own, I guess, department within the entire.
Well, we think it's very well protected.
We feel it is. I'm going to stick with that. So some issues just to come up as we look to the 2020 census is that, over the past 10 years, there's been limited funding for the 2020 census. 2020 census, all the work actually happens many months and even years in advance of April 1st, 2020. So having that funding well in advance is the most important part as we look at staffing and outreach efforts. The chart that Philip has pulled up is just a look at how the funding has dramatically decreased from both the 1990 and 2000 census to what is planned in the 2020 census. That has direct implications in undercount representation. So if we are not able to count everyone, it means less dollars are directed to our community. It also has implications this year for the state of Colorado in potential congressional delegation. So as you can see in the map, it's a little small and hard to read, but just to give you a sense of how the census is able to the Census Bureau, I'll clarify, is that there is one person for each of those colors. So in Pitkin County, there's one person based in Grand Junction for the U.S. Census Bureau right now that is leading the efforts for all of Region 3.
That's District 3, is
And
it?
it's all District 3, yes.
His name is?
Brian.
He's great.
He's really busy.
Is it Brian or Brad?
And that's something like 700,000 people, I believe, is correct? Well,
That's
we'll
correct.
find out.
We'll know.
I don't know.
We will find out. CD3 is about
Count 'em
700.
Yeah.
It's about 700,000 people. I think it's maybe the size of Connecticut. I
Yeah.
think
With one person.
one person.
Right.
And
He's
so
got the energy, though.
right, he's certainly capable, but it's a heavy lift. And so between some of the funding shortfalls and that relationship to the staffing shortfalls, what we're sort of driving at here is that we and pretty much every other government in the country that's paying attention, local government that's paying attention, is expecting there to be some pretty major staffing shortfalls in the actual execution of the census next year.
Can I ask a question back to the proposed increase in the budget and just how they determine that budget? It's based on year 6 in the decade. I'm trying to get a grip on what this actually means. 2000 census was at 150% of the budget in year 6.
So that graph is more meant to be illustrative than it is informative. What we're trying to show is that in the 10 years between each census, funding for the census ramps up starting about year 6.
Okay.
And it continues to ratchet up every year until the census is actually executed. And the reason for that is fairly straightforward. You have to staff it. You have to print 100 million census forms. You have to create websites. You have to execute nationwide marketing campaigns. All of this costs money. And so each year leading up to the census, the budget is supposed to get bigger to support the actual execution of the sort of ground game, if you will. And what we're just trying to show here is that it's not really getting
This administration has basically eliminated funding for the census.
For all intents and purposes, and to compound things, the Congress in 2011 mandated that the 2020 census be conducted online using a web-based platform. But they haven't allocated sufficient funds for the creation of and testing of that website in advance of the census. So the analogy we've been using as we talk to folks about this is the Obamacare rollout from, 2010, which was a disaster. The website kept crashing. People couldn't get the services that they needed, and it was a sort of rolling disaster for a number of months. And while it's not guaranteed that that's going to be the case, based on the research that we've been able to conduct, the funding that's available relative to the scope of the mandate, there's the potential for some problems around that.
Got it. Thank you for that.
So it almost, in my mind, it sounds to me like this is being set up for failure. It's being set up so we don't have a clear count. We don't have to fund communities with federal dollars that communities deserve and need based on the actual number of people, because we had a hard enough time 9 years ago, getting people to participate in this census because of their fear of government in many cases, which is, I think, accelerated in the last 9 years. And I'm really concerned about that because I think it's going to come back and hit local municipalities and counties really hard, not just with fair representation for the amount of people who live in their neighborhoods, quote unquote, but also for the lack of funding for programs and services that are so much needed, especially in this part of the state, where we have so many people and we have people who live at poverty levels. Well, we do anywhere in this country. But so I think for me, that's why we really need to step it up on our own part, so at least we can assure that our numbers are counted as best we can, not just in Pitkin County, but in our valley. And it said Aspen to Parachute, but I think if we kick it over into Garfield too, we're all in this together, and I think we need to participate in it together.
Yeah, and I would say I think the trend you're seeing nationally is it's becoming a local priority, not a federal priority. So states like Illinois and Minnesota are threatening to lose congressional seats. So the states have actually put up quite a bit of money to take it on locally. And I think it's the same trend we're seeing in so many other services.
Well, that's actually good to hear, but it's sad to hear, but it's good to hear.
So it's it's another federal issue that really the local efforts need to step it up. So,
Steve?
I participated in the 1990 census as a worker. So I was one of three crew leaders for all of Pitkin County. And under us, we had probably close to 30 enumerators who were going door to door at that time. And we had a supervisor above us. So we had, close to 35 people probably working in just Pitkin County. When I look at this chart here, I'm assuming that if the computer system is up and running, it's going to catch maybe half the people, maybe not even that many. There's going to be a whole lot of houses that nobody was counted there. That's going to require a whole another crew of people to go out to the houses that nobody responded from, because the Census Bureau not only counts people, it counts dwelling units, whether they're empty or have somebody living in them. And so somebody's going to have to go to each one of those and determine if someone was living there on April 1st. It's going to require a way bigger budget than the red line on there in order to accomplish that. I think that we should contact our congressional representatives immediately and show them this picture and say that red line needs to be up where the closer to where the 2010 census was, at least to adequately fund this.
The genesis of this collaboration was the creation of a joint letter last fall to which the BOCC and City Council and Town Council were all signatories, Town of Snowmass Village that is, to our congressional delegation and our legislative delegation here in Colorado, suggesting exactly that. And so in subsequent meetings with Senator Bennett's Western Slope representative, who I believe you met with as well, we made it very clear that jointly, collectively, our communities in the Upper Roaring Fork Valley are extremely concerned about all the issues that you've just enumerated, and that continues to be our position.
Kelly had a question?
Yeah, I have two. Does the back of the napkin math still indicate that Colorado could gain a congressional seat?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And, I've come at this from like the political ground game side of things, and $30,000 doesn't get you a whole lot of doors to knock on. So what is kind of the volunteer component to this? Are you guys outreaching to specific organizations in the Valley, or is that part of what's contemplated under this campaign?
Mm-hmm. So we can walk through and I think answer that in more detail, but the short answer is, to clarify two parts, is there's limited staffing from the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau is still going to hire those door knockers. There just are not going to be 35 in Pitkin County this year. There still will be door knockers, but part of this campaign and the effort now is really to work with all of our local partners. We've already presented to Healthy Community Fund partners to really work with them to get the education and outreach effort out now up through the end of the year, so that a lot of that education has happened before the census count even occurs. So, and that's really what this campaign is trying to kick off. Mm-hmm. So I can go through the rest of this if that might answer questions in more detail.
Sure, please, let's carry on. This is great stuff.
I think you guys have already hit on this a little bit, but there's 2,500 different programs receive federal dollars. It comes in a lot of different forms: direct payments, grants, loans. Colorado, annually, the estimate is about $2,300 per person. That's direct and indirect. So, roughly, if you run those numbers, these are the estimates of both direct and indirect, $41 million annually that come into our community. That can come from transportation funding, human services funding, being eligible to even apply for certain grants. It trickles down in so many different ways that we can't even enumerate here. And so to tee off of, the state has also taken a leadership role in this effort as well, recognizing where the U.S. Census Bureau is, and that's the Everyone Counts campaign that I think Philip could probably talk more about, and maybe some of you have seen those presentations as well, but it's looking at how can the state, through the Department of Local Affairs, they're staffing up some different resources, are coming up with outreach and education at the state level, and then are really, again, pushing that local campaign so that it trickles federal, state, and locally.
So the sort of structure, and you can go to the next slide, the structure with the state complete count campaign is such that the Federal Census Bureau, which is broken up into, the whole country is broken up into different districts. There's a district manager who's covering, basically the entire High Plains and eastern portion of the western United States. It's a gigantic area. And they interface with the state level campaigns. So in the state of Colorado, the Department of Local Affairs is the sort of organizing entity who is staffing the Complete Count committee, which is about 45 people from all over the state, representing nonprofit, local government, state government, and then various agencies that would be involved in the execution of the census. And our job at that committee level is to be a conduit between sort of federal level census workers and local implementers like ourselves, and then the state's efforts, DOLA's efforts at executing the census and local government. I know last year the state of Colorado allocated around $900,000 to support census execution in the state of Colorado. And the numbers we've been kicking around at the committee level on what the actual appropriation might need to be to make a meaningful impact and affect participation and affect the proper execution of the census is more like $1 per resident. That's what the state of California allocated last year, and they plan on allocating again this year in their 2020 budget, I guess is the way to describe it. And so the $900,000 that the state allocated last year is well short of the $5 and change million that we would need to get to that $1 per resident figure to make, again, sort of make a meaningful impact on backfilling the shortfall at the federal level for census funding. So that's the type of conversation that we're having at the committee level. I, in my position on the committee, can really be a sort of conduit for information from local government back up the chain to the state. And so to the extent that we locally have a robust plan in place and start implementing that plan to try and get a complete count in our valley, our position on that committee will enable us to help other local governments do the same thing for themselves and sort of shape the discussion at the state level around how we can best address these problems that we've identified with the census.
So is that a place where we've written a letter congressionally, federal? Is there something we can do then to assist you at the state level? And maybe we should be starting that outreach now, saying this is what we're looking at locally. This is our effort. We would like to spread the word throughout Colorado, but funding is essential and necessary, and it's got to come from the state level at this point.
I have ideas where to get the $5 million from.
I could see that look on her face as I was opening my mouth, and she's going, I already got it solved.
Is there any budget for it right now in the long bill?
So
Yeah.
HB 1239 is the Census Outreach Grant Program. I can't remember the dollar amount offhand. I have heard that actually in appropriations that what has been requested, it's being cut pretty significantly because of all the appropriations. So there is probably a role to play as it is going through the long bill and appropriations. And once it gets to appropriations, to play a role there at the state
Okay,
level.
so we need to be geared up and ready to go on that because it's coming down fast.
Yeah.
In that bill, what was requested?
I can't recall off the top of my head.
It was below the optimal.
It was under $5 million.
And now they've
the
cut it even
correct.
further
Cutting it
below,
more.
below.
That's correct.
I'll bring it back at my legislative update. How about that?
Okay.
And from the previous slide, I mean the math on this, and this is why I think we collectively are taking such a proactive posture on this topic, is the math makes sense. If the state needs to allocate $5.5 million or $1 per resident to get back $2,300 or $2,299, that would be the change, right, from the sort of estimated annual impact of federal dollars being allocated to the state. It's sort of a no-brainer. So it's clearly a political discussion that's happening around the funding, not purely a financial discussion. That's at least been the discussion again on the state committee.
We can talk political.
Right.
But if Pitkin County throws in $18,000, $1 for every resident, that's not going to help too much, is it? Not enough.
May send a
Go big.
trend,
We gotta
though.
go big statewide. We could set a
We're
trend.
doing it $1. You guys we want you to do it $1.
Mm-hmm.
Match us.
Just a good segue into some of what has already been thrown at this locally. So last year, the city of Aspen committed $15,000 and did a really robust analysis of where the undercount areas happened in 2010 so we can target that moving forward. The estimation is about 1 to 3% in 2010 were undercounted. Interesting developments that I think Philip can describe better is it's not only those hard to count populations, but also confusing addresses, where between the roads and the P.O. boxes, the door knockers didn't know how to get there, the mail surveys might not have gotten there. So kind of really have to have our hands in a lot of different areas to make sure we get that complete count. And so what we're doing, as we said, is starting to reach out to those community partners up and down the valley to work on who has those relationships, who's the trusted partner in reaching those hard-to-count populations, and what is the message that they need to go to them, not asking those populations to come to us is really the big effort that we're starting. And, you know, as we've all been talking, trying to look at this year in the 2019 budget for Pitkin County, kind of to match what city did last year, is the county committed $15,000 to really work on what this outreach effort will look like. And from there, we'll figure out what is the branding and working with our partners to get their input on how those dollars can best be utilized to get those hard to reach populations. And then the other thing is, what can we do locally to help with staffing resources? The other thing is, in 2010 was also when the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act happened. People were looking for jobs, were desperate for jobs. It was a way to get boots on the ground. We don't have that situation this year, and you know, the Census Bureau says that they're really competitive paying jobs. They are nationally. They are not competitive paying jobs locally. So we're also kind of keeping a track on that to seeing where we can support those 35 door knockers after the fact.
Hey, Kara, before you, just top line there, without local offer, it's 1 to 3% undercount in 2010. Is that what that?
Yes.
I just want to be certain of that. So we're estimating a 1 to 3% undercount in 2010, back when it was easier to hire counters.
That's correct.
Exactly.
And so we think it's going to go bigger.
That's
in
correct.
2020.
And I would just add too, and this is not described on the slide, but anybody who pays attention to the news is sort of well aware of the national dialogue around questions of immigration and citizenship, right? It's already a fairly toxic environment out there for folks who feel exposed relative to their residency status. And to make it super clear, the census counts residents. It does not count citizens. And there's obviously a court case moving through the Supreme Court as we speak to that effect. But again, what we're interested in doing here locally is accurately counting the residents in the Roaring Fork Valley. And that's a super clear mandate. And so for us to try and stick within that 1 to 3% undercount range, I think is a reasonable objective for 2020, given the funding challenges. And so this structure that Kara described is really geared towards trying to do that. And that sort of begins and ends with really effective outreach on our part to try and overcome some of those hurdles that have been put in place since the last census.
Can I go back and ask a question about the computers? And I totally agree that that's a good analogy. And I think you're being really positive to think that that's not going to be an issue, especially since it's not funded to not be an issue. Is there still the opportunity for people to do them offline?
We did just discover last week, I think we heard, there is the ability to do them offline. We do not know yet, we haven't gotten confirmation if those offline handwritten ones are only follow-up, if they're only non-response follow-up. That has not been clear if, because then that's a very big concern, obviously, as well. So there is finally at least an option to do a hard copy. We don't know timing-wise
We need to
when
find
that
that out.
happens.
And on top of the fact, if the computer system isn't up to speed, literally, there's still a population out there who is not comfortable doing things online and who may choose to just not do it if they. So they may be a follow-up, or they may be somebody we need to follow up with and find a way to get them the opportunity and that makes it comfortable for them so that they actually do it.
And that's I think an excellent point and an opportunity for me to describe the sort of two-pronged approach that we need to take as the local committee to this. And one is sort of tailored, effective messaging, right?
Right.
So we are targeting hard-to-reach populations and sort of inventorying what they are. Some of the ones that are sort of classics are children under 5, non-English speaking residents, residents over the age of 80 is another, and that 80 is a sort of cutoff point for when people start to become more isolated in their life, in their lifestyle and whatnot. And each one of those groups, and there's a dozen more, are going to require a unique message in order to have trust in the census process, know how to participate in the census, and be encouraged to do so, right? So that's kind of on the one hand is that targeted, specific messaging for each of those hard-to-count populations. The other is, as Kelly alluded to, the ground game, right? What does that look like for us in terms of if there are no printed census forms, do we have volunteers with their own iPads who are going out and helping somebody through at their door, helping them through the census form process because there are no paper forms? I'm still at the committee level at the state trying to work through the mechanics of that. What is actually legally permissible for us as local governments and volunteers to do? How much hand-holding can we actually engage in? To what extent can we fill it out for them with their consent, right? All those questions still need to be answered, but those are really the two tracks that we're looking at locally to, again, try and stay within that 1% to 3% undercount range.
Need to have a backup plan if those computers are full or if they're backlogged or if they're down. So we don't, I mean, it's going to be hard enough without that furthering the uphill battle. And I think having that, not just two-pronged, but even plan A and B for two prongs.
I mean, you can go as far down this rabbit hole as you want. Even if we can transmit a census form for every resident in or every household in Pitkin County, who's to say that the federal infrastructure for this is, the technological infrastructure is even equipped to
process
hold the
it once
data,
it gets
right?
there.
So
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. This is all stuff that is sort of out of our hands and out of our scope, but certainly on our radar.
Steve?
Relying on an internet connection for people to fill it out means to me that every rural part of the whole United States that has poor internet connection or no broadband, they're going to be undercounted automatically because they're not going to reach everybody. So the places with really good internet connectivity are going to get more money because they're going to have a better count.
But don't
So
worry, our
that's a
broadband
concern to
initiative
me.
will be completely done by March 30th, 2019.
So I just had a thought. We should be paying people to hand in completed census forms or to do the process. If the state, I think the state of Colorado should appropriate money and everybody who fills, completes their a valid return on their census form gets X amount of money, whether it's $20 or $100
I don't think we can
or
legally do
something,
that.
some amount, just
I don't think
just to get
per person.
just to get the forms returned, have that be a financial incentive. Now, I know some people will try to fill in multiple, vote early, vote often. They're going to try to fill in many different forms. That's why they wouldn't get paid until it's validated through some mechanism.
Well, the good thing is we
Just
have a
a
great
suggestion.
conduit to the state, and
great.
he can bounce those ideas off and see what is legally
Tell them we'll
permissible.
make an incentive from an icon pass.
That's now included with the Premier Pass.
That would affect lift lines for sure.
Yeah.
Bring the ski company on.
What else you got for us?
Just, I think we've really touched on it all. You guys are probably going to get sick of us over the next year. But really, we'll be looking at how we can work with our partners and then what role that you guys can play to really help keep the word out. Not only get the word out, but keep the word out for a while. As I alluded to, the other barrier is just next spring is election season, so it just adds to the complications. So really a lot of our
canvassers will be otherwise occupied.
Yeah, canvas in one hat and door knock on the other, I guess. So really a lot of our efforts are going to try and get everything, that as much information as we can out and through December of this year. And so that's where we're at.
Basalt, what's Basalt's involvement? Did we talk with them? Are they, even though they're not all within us, they're in the valley?
So I actually just spoke with Eagle County this morning, and they're going to get back and find someone that is going to be, that we have a contact with in Eagle County. And then Basalt also has been engaged in census efforts, and so we're starting to get coordinated with who have been the point people at the different jurisdictions to bring it all together.
Great. Well, thank you. We feel we're in good hands. Thank you for both for coming in.
I would just add that the sort of collaborative nature of this, I think, is a really good example of where the city and the county can work together on shared interests. And with our powers combined, I hope that we can sort of get there in terms of what the goal is. But I look forward to working with the BOCC.
So does that mean I have to invite you to dinner at my house now?
No.
Well, it's an excellent comment.
But you should go to dinner at his house.
Following up on this morning, the report, the City ACRA Committee report, it was pretty clear and great to see how I think the city and the county can work together, and that's the undercurrent today. Is
I agree,
cooperation.
and look forward to doing that.
Yeah. So anything else there? I think we're good. That's it.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
for
all.
coming in. We are at 11:45. We can break for lunch early unless you have something you want.
I'd leave it up to you. We could go through future agendas or break for lunch early. You guys are the boss, collectively.
How are you all doing? You want to cut out early? You want to do 15 minutes of agendas?
We're going to have a lot for exec, so we might as well
So
see what we
let's
can.
move it along then. Why don't
Okay.
we go to future agendas and get that out of the way?
All right, a few items for you. Give Patty time to organize her notes on
Yeah, I'm right
future
here.
agendas. I know. We talked about this before, but I'm not sure it really made it onto anyone's radar screen. Thursday, April 25th, there's an emergency management exercise at Bumps. It does go from 8 to 3:30. Elected officials are both invited and encouraged to attend. This one is actually going to be facilitated from staff from the Department of Homeland Security. And they will be running basically a tabletop exercise. So it'll include both a review of, the policymakers' roles during an emergency, the emergency operations center roles, the incident commander roles, and then walking through a tabletop exercise. And I believe it is going to be a surprise to all of us, like all emergencies really are. So if you are available, I know Valerie's going to be trying to get a count on that. If you could let Charlotte know so that we can communicate that to Valerie, that would be great.
I am planning because I don't think we have a COG meeting that day.
Okay.
And is that the entire day?
8 to
Yeah,
3.
but even if you can come in, it's great if you can make the entire day. For the policymakers, typically there's not quite as much to do during the events as the first responders and incident folks. But any portion that you can make would be welcome.
Excellent. Great. Thanks. Steve?
Well, I've been looking at that day because we were invited to go on a camping trip in Utah starting that day. And so I already looked on that April 25th, and there's also mental health first aid at CMC at the same time all day that day.
If you haven't signed up, that is full already.
Okay.
Yep.
Take
We're
that
going to be
off.
offering more of them. The good news is we
I knew
filled
there
the
would
first
be more
one.
of those.
Yep.
And I was thinking if I went to one, I would go to the emergency management. But at this point, I don't know if I'm going to be in town or not.
Okay.
Okay. And that's going to be out at Mountain Rescue?
No,
or-
it's at Bumps.
Bumps.
Bumps
You
It's
said
at
8
Bumps.
to 3.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
And it'll be quite a few people in the room for that.
That's 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.,
3:30, yes.
3:30.
The most
Unless you
important is
resolve the emergency sooner, we can be out of
the
there
morning.
sooner.
The morning's the most important for us to be there.
Depends how well we all manage it, I suppose.
Got it. Great. Thank you. On my calendar.
Other thing just to have on your radar screen, as at least some of you are aware, the state did pass legislation authorizing counties to raise the age to purchase tobacco products, as well as some other authorities. What staff's plan is, unless you tell me differently, is to get a recommendation from the Board of Health in terms of implementation, and to have that recommendation come to this board for a final adoption.
And I passed on the information I received from Eagle County as to their efforts. I
Yeah.
passed it
Our
on.
Board of Health meeting's the 18th, so we'll be able to get back to you.
Yeah, I
very
think
soon.
you're going to be considering it on the 18th. Eagle County may be a little bit ahead of us in
They are.
process, but not in spirit. So, unless there's any other direction, that's how we had planned to handle it. We think it's appropriate for the Board of Health to make a recommendation, and then for you guys to consider legislation pursuant to that authority.
Great.
Okay.
Moving it right along. That's good.
All right.
On that topic, will they or is it proper to consider opportunities to align valley-wide or,
Yeah, so
because we
Good
have
suggestion.
municipalities who have
Right.
made certain decisions, and my goal would be we have a pretty streamlined approach.
And I think that's going to be part of the conversation with the Board of Health. You also have Eagle County who's looking to implement, and I don't know that we have I don't have an exact read. I think Patty provided materials that will tell us how aligned those are with the efforts that Aspen and Snowmass and Basalt have. And I frankly don't know how aligned they are in their legislation at this point. So we can take a look at that.
That's an
Yeah.
excellent
I think
suggestion.
the bigger
Thank you.
question with everyone is not so much raising the age to 21, it's the loss of tax dollars, a loss of money from the state, and how to reimburse their coffers with its tax. And that's a bigger question that comes further down the line because it has to go to a ballot.
It'd have to go to ballot for Pitkin County because we don't have much commercial activity. The take is, I think last time I looked at it, is around 17,000 a year.
Right, that's the number I heard.
And so, in terms of the revenue loss, it's,
A buck a person.
it's revenue, but it is certainly
But
not at a
that's the
level that
broader
would probably
question, I
affect
think,
your.
with municipalities and
Yeah.
We
counties.
spend more in smoking cessation programs, don't we?
Yes.
We get that money from the state.
So, last thing I have for you, we are revisiting getting our joint meeting set up with the Roaring Fork School District to do a tour of the Basalt Vista housing project. It did not show up on your future agendas, but is now we've got on May 8th from 5 to 6. That is a regular meeting day. We have checked. There's no land use items or such, so we think we're pretty safe getting out of here by 4 o'clock. We're going to keep that agenda light, and we would go down and do a tour with the school board of the Basalt Vista project. We also have asked if there are any additional discussion items from the school district that they'd like to get together on, and I don't know if this board has any additional discussion items at this point for the Roaring Fork School District. I believe this is the first time we'll have ever met with
Yeah,
them.
it just their in-house counseling system would be a thought. To have the counselor on school base. Big discussion that came up with Eagle County the other day. And just a heads up, that's baby due date, so I don't know where I'm going to be.
Fair enough.
Not my baby, grandbaby. Let's clarify
So
that.
if we can revisit that, but if you guys do think of some, if you could let me know so we can communicate that. That is all I have on future.
Joint meeting
agenda.
with City of Aspen.
Oh yeah, joint meeting with City of Aspen. You guys had given us direction to take that off. I think we are having discussions this week and next week about bringing the joint IGA forward to revise APSHA governance. So we're kind of keeping that on in case we need to have another joint discussion with the bodies. If that just goes smoothly and there's no further changes, I think we would probably delay that until the new council is seated.
Okay.
Unless you guys have any other thoughts on that. That is the one thing, we weren't sure of the timing of that when you guys had talked about the joint meeting in May.
So that leaves just one item on my list. Greg, may I?
Please.
on Wednesday, the 24th of our regular meeting of April, can we move the last item, which is the emergency ordinance with Kara, before land use items? Because I won't be participating in that last big Aspen Mountain. Plus, we don't want staff to have to wait for what could be hours. We can put her up before the land use public hearings. But that's how that first reading of that emergency ordinance was planned.
That's the one for the small cell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Good suggestion.
Back to the question you mentioned regarding the governance of APSHA. Clarify for me because at our last joint meeting with the city, we had a consensus in terms of certain aspects of that.
Yeah. So, George, what we've done is we've taken the direction that we got from the last joint meeting, and we, city staff and county staff, have redlined the IGA to implement those recommendations. So that is coming forward this week in a work session to the city council, and we're on next Tuesday to bring that to you guys to check if the red line matches the intent. Our expectation is that at least from staff's perspective, the language that is proposed matches what direction we were given in the last joint meeting. But as we know, sometimes there's incremental changes in direction because people have considered an item further or had another idea. And if that happens, we'd likely want to get both bodies together again to discuss those details.
And the city's discussing it tonight, I believe?
Yeah, and actually, I am going to probably cut out because Phyllis and I did the first draft of the red line, and Sarah and I have committed that we'll have county representatives at the city council meeting, and we'll have city staff here when we meet with you guys. So I am going to go over for that meeting today.
So you'll leave exec early?
Yeah.
Do you need to have a commissioner there?
Probably, I don't think so at this point. It's mostly Phyllis and I did the initial draft of the red line, and so we're there just to explain if there are questions about the language and such.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Future agendas. Is that it?
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Lunch?
I think we're going to break for lunch, Grassroots, 3 minutes early.
Thank you. We'll be back at what time?
Be back at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Thank you. Back after our lunch break, April 9th, BOC work session, upcoming regular meeting items. Continued today, the addition of a photovoltaic system on the new ambulance facility located at 403 Castle Creek Road. Take it away, Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. Thank you. My name is Rich Engelhardt. I'm the Deputy County Manager. And with me, I've got Gabe Muthing from the Ambulance District, and then Mike Tierney. Mike is our successful bidder on our solar project. So we're here to update you on where we're at as far as providing some panels onto the ambulance facility. So what we're looking for is today is just kind of an update, but tomorrow we're asking for the commissioners to approve an informal resolution. It'll be on the agenda tomorrow under the consent. And it's to add the photovoltaic, I can't hardly say that, voltaic system, voltaic. It's all voltage, right? On the south side of the shed roof of the ambulance facility. And just a little background, back when we had started the project, the board had asked us to kind of take a look as we went through this process if we were able to come back and add solar in. because it was designed, the interior was designed to be able to house the solar. So we went ahead and built as if we were going to put it on. However, we wanted to wait and be able to use contingency dollars on the project if those were available getting this far into the project. And we're happy to report that we're up out of the ground quite a ways, actually. No dinosaur bones or anything underlying. So we are feeling pretty good about where we're at as far as the construction project goes right now. So we had started out with around $370,000 in contingency, and I can show that a little later on. It's for a project this size is a good contingency to carry. So we are going to ask for your consideration that we can go ahead and utilize that. We've already committed about $6,000 of that to help with the trail on the other side of the building, not the ski trail, the old ski trail. There's another one that goes up into that neighborhood up there into Twin Ridge. And it's a challenge, and we found that out when we were having our neighborhood meetings. So we've committed to at least $6,000 of that. What kicked this all off is, as you know, we went through the process with the city, and they had approved an ordinance number 9. It was a 2018 series. However, in that presentation, we did not have the panels as part of that at that time. So since then, we have felt comfortable. We can go ahead and move forward. So contacted the city after your direction, and they felt that they could do this administratively from an approval standpoint. So it wasn't a major change. It did stay with under the roof limits. If you recall, that was a kind of a big discussion item with the city. And I'll show you here in a minute kind of what that looks like. But we were able to stay underneath those roof elevation heights. They had 3 other requests. One is that the board make a formal resolution or letter regarding your approval for this. The other was that we met with the neighborhood and had the meeting, and you all had also required the same of us. So we did hold a meeting with the HOA, Twin Ridge, and then also the owner of the Mountain Oaks, which is actually the hospital employee housing area there. That met with satisfaction. We talked about a number of things. We talked about the parking lot, the construction. There were concerns that we were actually putting a unit on top of this building. Just a little side note here is, as you look at that building, it's got an elevator shaft that goes up, and it's completely encased, but you have to go above the roof to be able to get the elevator up high enough to deliver on that floor. And they were concerned that we were not keeping our word, that we were going to be putting units up on top of that. And so we were proud and pleased to be able to dispel that rumor. So it was a good meeting overall. So where we're at now is that we had getting this far into it, we went ahead and contracted with FCI, and they're going to be the contractor instead of us doing a contract itself. So we contracted with FCI to go ahead and bid the project out. And as part of that, we received 3 bids. It was Sunset Solar, Aspen Solar, and Sol Energy. These came to you, these numbers came to you earlier in the year, and we had talked about going with Aspen Solar, and one of the reasons being is that the panels came from the USA. You guys were pretty clear on the fact that you felt that was worth that extra dollar amount to go with the middle bid on this. At that time, we talked to you about the potential of about a $2,250 savings or a rebate from CORE. After talking with CORE, we're now at $10,000. Now that this project has been able to kind of run through the process, we are utilizing the ambulance district's metering, and so now Holy Cross will allow a rebate of $24,699 instead of our $18,000 that we had originally thought, because it was going to possibly be under Pitkin County. So Mike is kind of taking the lead on getting those all put together for us. Aspen Solar's bid was $77,000 plus, and then the additional cost for roofing modifications and FCI fees added another 10 grand. So the total cost of this is about $50,409. And so I'm going to show you a couple of photos here. This is a plan view of what this will look like. This is looking straight down on the top of the building itself. And the dark black are the panel locations. So it's kind of centered on the building itself. And this is if you were standing in the HHS building looking towards the backside, and you can kind of see the dark panels there in the red. I outlined the roof in red so you could see that it doesn't go clear up to the top. So very unobtrusive from an application standpoint. So the system costs, I just kind of gone over those in a little bit more detail. The skyline roofing costs is about $4,900, and they had to go in and kind of do some modifications whenever this thing's attached to make sure we don't provide leaks in the roof, and then the insurance and fees with FCI. So what I'd like to do now is maybe have Mike talk a little bit about kind of the payoff and questions you may have regarding the system itself, and also show you. I'm gonna make the move to get out of this real quickly, and then open up a browser here, and then I'm gonna let Mike run this, and we'll start over here with this one. Okay, Mike.
All right.
Welcome.
Yeah, Mike Tierney, Aspen Solar.
Nice to see you.
Glad to
Wonder
be
how
here.
come that's not showing on the screen up there.
Yeah, we need to try to get this browser on the screen. We could talk a little bit about payback, payoff. There's different ways to look at it. Simple payback is kind of what most people do, where you take the cost of the system and you take your estimated savings per year, do the math, and you come up with how many years the system will pay for itself in today's electric costs. It doesn't take into account inflation or any of those costs involved. If we look at the 53,000 number,
For some reason, it's not reflecting back up on the screen.
Well, our techno
I'm not
guy
sure
is out
that-
of the room.
Where did he go? I may have to flip this screen around. Actually, you may be able to kind of see it, and Mike can talk to it a little
Yeah.
bit. So
So
it's just a demonstration.
just to continue the simple payback, there's two different reports that I use. One is done by, it's a software put out by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. It's called PV Watts. Greg, you're familiar with it. We used it on your system. It's what all the utilities require as far as system performance. They need to see this before they give us the okay to go ahead and do these systems and provide the rebate for us. And so at this system with the PV Watts, it looks like it's going to save about $6,000 a year at today's electric costs. So if we, do the math, 53,000 divided by 6, we're looking at between 8 and 9 year payback, which
Pretty good.
which is really good.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it.
I'm done.
So at the first stab, 8 to 9 years is pretty attractive, I think, in anybody who's going to develop something that's, people are going with it. So I just wanted to point that out. That's kind of where we're at. What we have on the screen now is a software that is called eGauge, and Core, just this last week after we met, has told us that they're going to provide this hardware, the actual device, for the Aspen Ambulance Barn. And so every day we can look at this. This is just a snapshot of what's going on. This is a system in Beaver Creek that we did up in Bachelor Gulch. And the green is the solar production, the red is the house consumption. So with eGauge, you get both consumption and production, and it comes up with all kinds of reports that you would want to look at if you're so inclined to do so. But this one's really peculiar when you look at it. What happens in November, where the consumption goes up from kind of a steady 3 kilowatt per hour to 21,669 currently. You can see the number on the far right. That's real time. What happens is they turn on heat tape. That is all heat tape on the house. This is a house consumption. They're using 22,000 kilowatts 24/7 for heat tape, whether they need it or not. So
And sometimes they leave it on in the summer because they forget to
Yeah,
turn
well,
it
they're
off.
using it right now, and I bet there's nothing on the roof.
yeah, and so you can see during May, June, July, all the way through November, the solar does probably 30, 40, 50% of their house consumption needs, and then it pretty much goes away. Well, currently you can also see that in the 2019 all the way until right now, April, the far right bottom of the screen, there's no green. And that's because, like a lot of solar systems this winter, they were covered with snow. So there was zero production from the solar, and it just now started to produce because it probably melted It's a second home way up on Batcher Gulch.
What's the roof pitch? Not to get too
This
specific.
roof pitch is probably 20, 25 degrees.
Okay.
And it has wood shakes below it. It was pretty cool. It's PV integrated where the plane of the PV array is the same plane as the roof. So they kind of built up the roof on the perimeter to, set the panels in. But I think the wood shakes.
Maybe they should be putting their heat tape on their PV panels so they could generate electricity to compensate for their heat tape.
Great idea. Great idea. And then this is another software package. This is similar to what the Aspen Ambulance Barn is going to get. This is the Snowmass Fire Station. We just finished that in December. And it is a perfect snapshot real time of what each panel is producing. And so that's what the Snowmass Fire Station will have and your Aspen Ambulance Barn will have. So if there is a bad panel or a bad inverter, we can go right to the panel. There's going to be 85 panels, by the way, on the Aspen Ambulance Barn. We don't want to take all day trying to find out which of the 85 is bad by doing, meter reading. We can go to the software and determine which one is bad if there is.
Oh, that's amazing.
So pretty neat that this can do it. And so each panel has a little power optimizer on it. And if I could just pull up one thing here. So I'm going to change it from today until lifetime. See how fast we can come up. The darker the blue or the lighter the blue is the more power produced. So we told Snowmass Fire that I would shovel the roof once this winter. And on March 17th, I went up there and there was 3 feet of snow on these panels.
They got you.
Part of your promise.
Yeah.
You'll never do
I
that
got to
again.
climb up the ladder truck, so I felt pretty good about it. But we were able to shovel out the perimeter, and if you look at the numbers on the panels on the perimeter, they're the ones that have produced the most because they started producing right on March 17th, and everything else in the interior has now just recently started coming through. One more thing, and then I'm ready for questions, I think, after this. So this is the kind of information you can get. This is everyday power production. So it's a 15 kW system, and peak power here was about 11 or 12 K. So that's pretty good because they're not all uncovered yet. And if we go one last time here. There you go. That's what happens when you have a winter like we had. So from December until we started digging out, 0 production. So if there's any way we can make it to where keep these things uncovered safely, which with ropes and harnesses, I think it's a good idea to go up a few times a winter and try to uncover them from snow. Because these are going to be flush to the roof surface, and it's only about a 15-degree pitch, so we could potentially see the same thing here. It just that we never went up, so it just built up and built up and built up. And yesterday this system produced 86,000 watts of power, 86 kilowatts of power. So we feel good about what we're doing with the Aspen Ambi. There's 85 panels. This has 48, so we should see about double the production.
And are they 300 or 350 watt panels?
These are 360s now.
All right, wow.
360 watt modules on a normal size. You can get 430s, but they're monsters.
Bigger.
So for power density for the same square footage, you're not getting a whole lot more power. Does that make sense? It's almost more cost effective to go with the 360 than the 430. And that's why we did that design.
George, question?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, 2 questions that sort of you touched on. One was determining when panels go out and being able to locate them and replace them. So that's part of our long-term warranty, or how does that work?
The panels have a 25-year power production warranty.
Wow.
To get UL listed, they have to produce 80% of the original power output the day that they're manufactured. So we can determine that. There's a 10-year parts warranty. If something fails within the first 10 year, Solaria, which is a manufacturer we're using, will replace that panel, as well as within the 25-year power production warranty.
Okay, thanks. And then I was going to question the impacts of snow load, and because we don't want to not be able to utilize this for 4 or 5 months a year. That would be a travesty, obviously. So, you know, Gabe, I mean, what sort of ideas or options you have to try to address keeping those solar panels viable and usable?
I think that's a great question, and I think that's a bridge we'll have to cross when we come to it. We're looking at the, the pitch of the roof is not significantly steep comparatively to other buildings, but I do think that, we'll develop a plan, because I agree with you, that seems like a lot of lost time and money to put into that. So I certainly think we could look at it. We'll look at some, whether we need to outsource that to a company to clean it for us, or whether or not we'll have our own staff. I said it was a great training for our staff.
Rescue training?
So we'll see how that goes. But I agree.
Yeah, even better if they slide off.
2 days, right, Mike? You promised us 2 days?
Yeah, I mean, that's
one day per installation.
That's one of the challenges in terms of trying to utilize renewables in our environment, because on site, because there's so many impediments in terms of whether it's topography, whether it's the trees, the snow, the altitude. So, when we have our discussion down the road about trying to reach net zero, on site, it's probably, for this environment, this climate, it probably is not feasible. And so I think when we want to utilize renewables and solar, we want to make sure they actually work for the year, throughout the year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I agree. I think that probably is our one impediment to this, right, is the snow. We don't have a huge amount of, trees around. It's got a great pitch, and I think Mike even said it was, this is almost the perfect roof to put it on, right, with the where we've got it. So I think we'll get max efficiency out of it when we can. But I agree with you. We'll definitely look into.
Is there just one quick follow-up? Is there ability to utilize batteries for storage? So if you have some peak periods where you're getting a lot of snowfall and waiting to remove some of the snow, you've been able to store some power. Is that a possibility?
That's a good technical question.
Yeah, currently battery technology is really not cost effective. They have a generator on site. That, I think, will take them through the small brownouts, short brownouts that we currently get. We are doing some residential solar plus storage, that's the term now, battery systems, but they're, for this last house to do 10%, up to 20% of their load, $50,000 for a residential system. That's almost the cost of this whole system. So we're not there yet. We're hoping that costs continue to go down and technology goes up. It's the lithium ion phosphate that seems to be the leader at this point.
Isn't Holy Cross looking at a program, something like that, to do some on-site storage? Didn't we hear that at our retreat? Wasn't that part of?
Are doing it.
Yeah, it's a technology. It's being explored by a lot of utilities, but it's going to take a lot of reformulation. You need to have microgrids that the batteries can feed into, and our infrastructure isn't set up that way, but I think they're looking to a future where it is.
Because I know it's evolving with the electric car industry as to what to do with their spent batteries that really aren't spent for uses such as this. So I think that's one way they're looking at recycling electric vehicle batteries. So it's something to keep our eyes on.
Kelly?
Will this array have the possibility of providing all the energy that the building needs at certain times in the year?
I think we've kind of talked about that. It's a little difficult without knowing, what those numbers are going to be on the new building. I think right now, worst case, it'll cover 31%. of the electrical cost of it. We're hoping it'll be much higher than that. And all we did is really took the old building square footage, estimated usage, and the new building square footage, and just ran those numbers. So we're hoping to shoot for much higher. I don't know that we'll get full, but we'll see.
If the crew takes cold showers, it's a done deal.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
It's either that or really fast barn doors.
A couple of questions. One, I guess a couple of them for you, Mike. I can envision a technology where on a snowy roof you would have these little extension things that would stick up a little farther than the panels, catch the sun and start the melting process earlier. So if you have 6 inches of snow, the thing would stick up above that, the sun would hit it and it would melt the snow a lot faster. Is there anything like that anybody's doing right now?
Currently, there's nothing out there. You know, they produce electricity. I'd love to be able to use the electricity they produce to melt the snow that's on them. Nothing out there. A little like a windshield wiper, just you know, just.
Okay.
But no, there isn't, Steve.
Okay. Then in analyzing this site, is there any possibility of the trees that are kind of behind there blocking these panels at any time?
I don't believe so. I think we took a look at it, and they're far enough away that, and the roof is high enough that, if anything, it'd just be early morning sun, but it gets up rather quick there. So.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
then
question.
final question: would it be cost effective to put the panels on the wall like this? So
On
then
the
the
structure?
snow wouldn't be a factor at all. They would still produce a lot of electricity. It would be a different concept to have them vertically, so they're not pointed as directly towards the
I
sun.
don't think they have.
But they would run every day of the year. They wouldn't have snow on them.
I don't think that's the right, I think they're,
Yeah, I think probably,
Get the
Mike, you would probably know better, but as the sun's coming up, depending on which wall, unless you put them around 3 of the sides anyway, so that you catch the full sun. I'm not sure how cost effective it would be. We talked about them being actually tilted a little higher, but we had the concerns of the height on the building height and the neighborhood concerns about that as well. So
That was my question to follow up on this was, if we increase the pitch, I look at my roof when it's holding snow, it's like, God, I wish they were more vertical. Because you'd get an extra month of sun perhaps if they were. But is there data on that? Like, it seems like most people just go with roof pitch. And I can understand for aesthetic reasons, we're going to stick with that here, I think, right?
Right. We are.
But, increasing the pitch, does that make much of a difference?
Yes, it would. Problem with the roof like this is the snow would then pile up at the bottom and start to build up
Right, okay.
the panel. So, ideally is a big ground mount where you have 4 feet underneath the array and the snow just slides right off. But for this application, this is certainly the best use of the building. The best use of solar is just lay them flush. Photovoltaics just like to see daylight. So not necessarily direct light like solar hot water used to.
Just daylight will do it now.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And sure, more daylight on it, the more it produces. But as soon as the sun comes up, it is producing.
Okay.
Excellent. Well,
I have a non-technical, I have a procedural question.
Sure.
For some reason, I've been sitting on this board for a long time, and I don't think I've ever passed an informal resolution.
You have every one read resolution you've passed has been an
Technically
informal resolution. Yep.
I've just never heard it.
That's how it's referred to in the charter. Yeah.
I'm like,
we
so
don't
we
use
just-
the
okay,
language
sure,
very
let's
often.
do that. Just
And this is
informal.
coming back tomorrow. Is that what you said?
It is tomorrow, but I was gonna, but I can answer the question today because I don't have to
Right.
take up time tomorrow.
Sure.
I like being informal.
This,
so it's good with me.
I'd love to keep asking questions, but I think we have enough information here. This is
Sure.
great.
I think it's good to go.
Got one more?
One more question. Is this in the city of Aspen or is it in the county?
Oh, it's in the city.
In the city of
Yeah.
Aspen. They're always talking about that they're 100% solar, but that's actually for the Aspen Electric
Yeah.
part, which is more the downtown core.
Correct.
And this is out in the Holy Cross territory,
Holy Cross area, right. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious about that.
Yeah, no, we're still having to go through the city permitting process. So once tomorrow, after tomorrow, if you all approve it, we'll start down that path.
Informally.
Great.
Informal. I do have some more pictures. I don't know, you got
Wanna
about
blow
4 more
through 'em?
minutes here. If
Yeah,
you
sure,
want to
we got a
move
little time-
forward,
little time,
if we're
you
done
got it.
with questions on that, just to, as kind of an update of where things are. Gabe was getting on me, he says, you need better pictures than that, because we've already gone further than what these are.
I was
But
gonna say, it's-
just a couple of pictures of kind of what's going on there. You can see the insulation that's being put on it. We did make a decision, by the way, from an energy efficient standpoint. We had a blower test, or we're going to have a blower test on this to make sure we're sealing it up. And it was bid with batting insulation. And we've now made a decision to go and do the spray insulation like we did on this and really seal it up. But we had to make sure that everybody's on board with it, because that can create other issues within the building itself. So I really feel this is going to be a very good energy efficient building. This is go ahead.
I was gonna say, currently the lower section you see there in the building that's covered in a foil is now all block. So they've completely uncovered the front of the building now. It's all complete there. The Dens glass that you see up above in the yellow is still that way, but will receive the metal paneling here in the next couple of weeks. So it'll look like a real building here shortly.
The upper portion of that, some of those squares up there, those are the vents that are the return air and exhaust. And as you know, we pointed those away from that neighborhood. So this is kind of underneath the tent. This is one of our interesting ones. We actually had them pull this wall down and redo it. It didn't line up right. So FCI, that's how meticulous FCI is on this thing. And
Wow.
Gabe was there. We all assisted in the decision to have them redo it, and they said okay. So little look at the electrical side of things and how that's all being put together.
Now, the Bay Area is going to be isolated insulation-wise from the upstairs and the offices and all that, just so you have energy efficiency everywhere.
Yeah.
Separate from the big doors opening. Not going to cool the whole building down.
Yeah, it seems like a simple building, but I mean, you've got to have exhaust, proper exhaust, because it's a living space above, and you got the vehicles down below. So it's kind of looking across into what is going to be the day area for the crew. And downstairs, again, this is the start of the training room. I'm sure that's probably already enclosed by now.
It is.
Yeah, so, and just another kind of an angle of that, so. Just real briefly, we were all, excuse me, part of the steel top out. Great milestone for you all. We got a chance to sign the beam again, and as you can see, there's a couple of gentlemen up on top nailing that down.
That was cool.
Yeah, it was a great day. And then you can see we did the building dry-in. We're hoping for 4/12, so that's very close actually, and I think we're there. Interior paint will start on 5/6, so it's rolling along. We're on schedule and under budget still. So this is kind of a breakdown of the numbers, and so anticipating your decision, we will use about $59,000 of the $370 you see in owner contingency there. So it still leaves just more than $300,000 available, and we hope to turn that back in at the end of the day.
Great.
For our next project.
Yes, yeah, so.
Fantastic.
That's
Great
it.
to hear. Thanks for coming in. Gabe, Mike.
Nice to see
good
you.
to see you.
Welcome.
Yeah, glad
you.
you're here. This is exciting.
All right. Well, we will wait till tomorrow and take the next step from there.
I hope
Thank you.
everyone else gets a solar panel on their roof. This is a great incentive. The panels are getting better. The costs are coming down. Get your solar panels.
Yeah. And it really does fit into, the board's desire after the retreat. We talked about energy and
Yeah.
so this is, I think we all feel good about this one.
Thank you.
All righty.
All right, and we're off.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay, we are 15 minutes ahead of schedule. Actually, we're 45 minutes ahead of schedule here. Could that be?
I don't think you are.
No? Where are we?
No, we're right on track.
Future agendas, though. Haven't we already done that?
Yeah, but we're gonna move to.
You have Dave.
Oh, we're 15
Dave's
minutes
here.
out. Dave's here.
Dave's
Come on
here.
down.
Bye. Thank
The
you,
dynamic
gentlemen.
message sign. I thought I was going to buy an extra half hour there, but
No,
okay.
A lot of time.
gonna eat it up now.
Welcome.
Thank you. Get this
This is regarding the dynamic message sign on Highway 82.
You know, while he's doing that, I failed to remember when we were having this discussion about the cantilevered signs at Carbondale.
Yeah.
Is that what they come? Then I drove by and went, oh, I knew I had seen them somewhere on Highway 82.
Yeah.
And they're definitely urban oriented when you drive by.
Visible.
Yeah, they are. They are.
I mean, in terms of seeing the
Yeah.
message.
And nothing getting in their way.
Yeah.
But I don't want one here. I'm just saying they're interesting there.
No, yeah, right.
That is our nearest cantilever.
And I forgot about that. And I went, oh, look. Funny how you get in tune to things that you never, drive by all the time.
It's true. Before I get into it, I just wanted to give you a couple of brief announcements. So the first one is the EOTC retreat. Thank you all for filling out the poll. So the date that's falling out that works for the most people right now is Wednesday, August 7th. So I'll be sending out a meeting invite on that here shortly, if you want to pencil that in. And then another one is the Brush Creek Park and Ride Open House is tomorrow night at CMC from 5 to 7:30.
Great. Will there be refreshments, David?
I don't believe so.
What time is it tomorrow?
5 to 7:30.
You guys will still be here. I'll go for you.
No, we won't.
There's not a formal presentation or anything, so you can come whenever. With the dynamic message sign, you guys were all at the last EOTC meeting, but just a brief reminder of the decisions that were reached in relation to the dynamic message sign. I did reallocate the $400,000 for construction from 2020 to 2019, so that gives us now $450,000. The resolutions to each of the jurisdictions are scheduled and should be going forward here shortly. You guys will be coming through with the supplemental budget for that reallocation. It was also decided to use the butterfly design, so not going with the cantilever. Standardizing the name to Brush Creek Park and Ride, and then staff was given the direction to come back with some more visualizations on the 18-foot butterfly versus the 26-foot, the list of messages so you could compare the abbreviations. And there was some talk about doing a mock-up, physical real life-size mock-up. We did look into that because of construction time, and we would have to get permitting from CDOT. They don't let us just build things that large in the right-of-way. I'm hoping that the visualizations in combination with the post out there will work for you to try to keep things moving on track. So the direction that we're looking for here today is just the 18-foot versus 26-foot. And then this is a reminder on the location. We are looking at about 1.05 miles from Brush Creek Park and Ride. That does give us 2,700 feet of visibility and 12 seconds of read time coming up Valley.
It's where the one is right now was for the Opry event at Buttermilk.
I would actually be further down Valley from that.
From that one? Oh, are you sure?
Where's don't have a pointer here. So the current one is on the Up Valley side of the Smithway intersection. Our read was that it was safer to put it on the Down Valley side so that people read the sign, pass it, and then if they are merging onto Smithway, they're not doing both merging and reading the sign. So they would have passed it by that point.
Is that sign going to be, how far off the highway is it? Is it inside the open space? That's part of the Cozy Point open space, correct?
It would be on CDOT right-of-way, so this would all be
CDOT
permitted
right-of-way.
through CDOT, yeah, so it wouldn't be on Cozy Point. I'm not sure exactly how far off the highway. That's all dictated by CDOT. I can look that up for you if you're really curious.
Well,
about that.
yeah, I'll leave it to them. I trust them.
It would be very similar to the one down near Public Works.
Right. Okay.
And then looking at the visualization, so the one on the left, that's the 18-foot, and the one on the right would be the 26-foot. So this is the same location that we discussed at the OTC meeting with the different messages. So you'll notice some of the messages, you do lose some of the verbs, so you lose the U's in the right-hand side with the 18-foot. And so it becomes a little bit more of a cryptic message. It is staff's opinion that the 18-foot does still achieve the goal. And I think at this point we're balancing the values of the visual impact and versus the functionality of the sign. But I think even at 18 feet, we're still achieving the goals that are set out.
Comment?
And these are just larger images.
Okay.
So when you say achieving the goals, I thought one of the goals was to be able to provide verbiage letting people know how the timing it would take for them to drive into Aspen. And so as an encouragement to utilize the bus system.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's in the message signs or in the message lists here. So actually that's
So how would that look on the 18?
the 18-foot.
On the 18-foot.
Number is that? Did you find it
Where'd you
on
get
there?
that from?
It was in my packet, my paper packet.
Oh, I got it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's on the 18. It would be messages 16 and 17. It looks
16 and 17. Oh, okay.
But not 99 minutes.
Not 99 minutes. That's just the
Like
filler.
Just
free
a filler.
bus, 99 minutes. I'm like, nobody's gonna wait
Hey,
for that.
Dave,
bus.
do they ever do a combination of dynamic and additional? Like you could have a banner on the top that said "Use the Brush Creek Park and Ride" because we're going to tell them to use that every chance we get. Right? That top line may never change.
I'm not aware of any that
I'm just wondering if you can combine hard and dynamic, or maybe it's a separate sign that says "Use the park and,"
Yeah, so what we're looking at with this is the dynamic sign and then getting standard static signs, one at half mile. So this is a mile out, and then a static sign at a half mile, and then one at the intersection saying Brush Creek Park and Ride that way.
Excellent. Okay.
So that's how we're looking at handling that.
So we have additional information in addition to this. We'll be directing people, the stuff that
Yeah.
doesn't need to be dynamic.
Yeah, especially so that people see on here, use Brush Creek Park the Ride, they think, well, I don't know where that is. Then there's another sign in a half mile that says it's coming up on your left, and then at the intersection saying turn there. So those signs will always be on. Obviously, there's a number of different messages we can display through the dynamic message sign. So those will all, but the identification signs will always be there, those static signs.
You could only use Brush Creek Park and Ride if you had the bigger sign. You have to drop the use if you go to the smaller sign, right?
Exactly. So then it becomes this message, so Brush Creek Park and Ride, free bus, left at light. And that was one of the comments that I did receive from Snowmass, is they liked the ability to use verbs, to be able to say use, and thought that it conveyed more instruction.
You already met with them and they're supporting the big sign?
I did meet with Snowmass. They voted 3-2 for the 26-foot. And so two folks wanted the 18, 3 wanted 26.
And you haven't met with City of Aspen yet?
I met with Aspen yesterday. They were solidly 18. They weren't interested in going to the 26. They also had, they have some concerns with the location. So I may be meeting with them later on today to review a possible alternative location that we had on the staff side dropped out. That's 2 miles up the road. And it's staff's opinion that was too far to be. You lose a lot of functionality at that distance. They're concerned about visual impacts with cozy.
But where would it be at 2 miles? Like
Well, I mean, this is going to be one of the challenges, right? Because when you're dealing with 15 elected officials, and one wants this and one wants that, Steve wants 2 signs, someone in Snowmass wants no signs. I mean, that's your challenge, because we need to have agreement amongst all 3 entities, and if compromises have to be made to get there, we'll have to make compromises, and including us, we have to realize and accept that, and as well as City of Aspen and Snowmass Council, because otherwise it will just be stuck like other things have gotten stuck with the LTC.
So here's a question: Does Snowmass count as 3-2, and it gets added into the total pool of votes, or is it there?
It has to be passed by each jurisdiction.
No,
It has to be
it's
jurisdiction, right?
Basically, each entity has a veto.
Got it.
If you think of it that way, it's Yeah, David's job is 3 times harder than mine, but that is the governance challenge. I think the location seems to be kind of a miss on communication. I think the city has some view plane policies, if I understand correctly, around Cozy Point that weren't taken into account when David had brought the location and designs through staff initially, and I think those were identified later in the process, and that's really what's driving, if I understand correctly, it's what's driving city council's
Well,
concerns.
2 miles, another mile back would still be on Cozy Point, wouldn't it?
I did include in here in case this question came up.
That's why I asked it. You coached me.
So this is, I just received this morning from Chris Berudi. So I don't have all the labels in here. It's kind of hard to read, and unfortunately, I don't seem to have a pointer.
I can show you how to do that.
So the first one, Up Valley, is where it's going to be, well, it's planned to be located?
That was the first proposal, yeah.
Oh, look at that. All right. So over here, this is Brush Creek Park and Ride.
I'm going the wrong way.
This is the location that we have contemplated as part of EOTC. And then this is 2 miles up the road. So through here, the conversation with the city said, well, what if we put it here? We've got some steeper slopes. It wouldn't have the visual impact of being at Cozy Point. The issue here is that we don't have the appropriate read time. So because of this turn and the hill rounding this corner, the soonest we can put it is at this location to be able to get the 2,700 feet necessary to read it for 12 seconds prior to passing the sign. So Wildcat is right up here somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it's right about here maybe. And then the landfill road is over here. So this is on that stretch just before you make that turn.
But isn't that Cozy Point open space around that turn also?
This red here is all Cozy Point open
so
space.
it's just before it.
So it's just before it, yeah.
Where's Smith Hill Road on there? Can you?
Smith Hill Road is right here.
So it would be, okay.
So it's significantly before Smith Hill. So what I told them is that I was happy to look into it and bring it back. I don't feel comfortable moving forward to bidding unless this is all reviewed by the entire EOTC. So if they do decide that they want this other location, I let them know that we would need to bump this to the June EOTC to agree on the location. That does put us into a situation where we wouldn't be able to get it out to bid and get contractors and get it installed this year, which means that we would be looking at next year. So explain that to them. We'll see what they decide to do at this point, but I'll keep you updated.
They being the city.
They being the city, yeah.
Got it, okay. All right.
So at this point, still looking for the,
Size.
if you guys are okay with this location, looking for the size. And then if they do decide that they are after all okay with this location, then we'll move forward to bid.
But we're already at a moot point with the size if Snowmass went one way and City of Aspen went the other.
No, with Snowmass, I got a first and second choice. So their first choice was the 26-foot, and their second choice, they said they could live with the 18-foot.
Thank you for that.
Great. I think the 18-foot messages look just fine. Maybe it was just a bias by the way they were presented, but I read them and I was like, oh yeah, this all looks great. This all makes sense. I understand this. Quick, do. And then I got down and they were longer and I was like, oh, I don't know if they need to be longer. I think the messages come across very clearly at 18 feet.
Steve, you had a comment?
So, looking at our preferred site, the 1 mile up,
Yep.
you could almost put the sign in the median at that point. Would there be any advantage to having it in the
CDOT does allow for a median sign.
in the median? Because if someone's going to be turning, say they're commuting in the morning and they're following the HOV lane and they're in the left lane, and they're going to be maybe turning on Smith Hill Road, if the sign is right there, they would see it. Or if they're going to be turning left into the park and ride, they're already in that left lane and they would be more inclined to see it. So that, I just wanted to.
Yeah, so we did
toss
look
that
into that.
idea
So
out there.
CDOT allows for the cantilever, the butterfly on the side, and then a butterfly in the center median. With the one in the center median, it sits about 10 feet higher than the one on the side, so that you can read it from both lanes. And looking at the topography, staff felt as though the visual impact with that being right in the median was huge, was too great.
Okay.
So that's why we ruled it out. But it is technically a CDOT option.
Okay, Patty?
I'm going to agree with Kelly. At first, I was going for the bigger sign, but thank you very much for the visuals. I don't think we need to do a mock-up. This really shows it clearly. It actually looks like it's there already. And the abbreviations, I think we can live with those, and I think the visual impact is, with the bigger sign, is really not acceptable. So I would go with the smaller sign right where you plan to put it.
George?
Well, what size is a sign there now, the movable sign that was just used for the special,
Which is right-
special
which is
events?
right there.
Do we have an idea? Is it
You know, I'm not sure exactly how large that size, or the size of that sign.
It's a little smaller.
It's
than
smaller.
It's smaller, okay. And so
It worked.
with your information, you can provide the same information on either the 18 or the 26 in terms of meeting their goals. It just may mean that some little verbiage may be excluded. So, for example, instead of use Brush Creek PNR, it just say Brush Creek PNR. Yeah. Yeah, I think I can live with the 18-foot because I don't see the need to have use. It's just raising the awareness, and most of the local traffic go up and down, and even the tourists will understand that there is a park and ride. And so, I think that's fine to try to abbreviate one or two little words to get to a smaller sign. So I can support that.
We could always add use to the static sign that says Brush Creek Intercept Lot,
Exactly.
use on top of it.
Exactly.
Then everybody would always be there to use the Brush Creek, if it made snowmen happy.
Looking at the two pictures, I like the 18-foot better. It's, the other one is like
Big.
urban, out in a rural area kind of a sign, more so than the other. I think if we use a really good selection of words, some of the abbreviations like HVY for heavy, I don't like that, but I think if we use the panel 1, panel 2, like having
I think that was supposed to say highway.
the sign, change the message every few seconds, we could get a lot more information on there if we do that wisely. I think the 18-foot one, we could give more information actually than the 26-foot.
I think so. If you looking at the chart here, so that's I'm not sure if you noticed this, but these are two different panels on the same sign. So this would be 6 seconds on this and 6 seconds on this one. And then the only ones that wouldn't change are the ones that don't have anything in the panel 2 column.
I'm just, for the record, I'm definitely want the smaller sign. If everybody was leaning toward the location farther down Valley, I'd be happy with that too.
Okay.
My biggest problem I have with the whole thing is that we never really talk about aesthetics when we're doing this, because we're so focused on safety and messaging, we don't think about the aesthetic. This is the entrance to our valley. We're all proud of it. We've been working and making great sacrifices to keep open space open. So adding more signs, you weren't here, but back in the day, an actual mayor of Aspen went out by night with a chainsaw and cut down all the billboards between Aspen and Basalt. And it's part of local lore and legend.
Bugsy
So
Barnard.
as we're adding more signs on the side of the road, we're just slowly eroding that, rebellious, Western frontier mentality, which is unfortunate.
Well, then we named a
So,
park after him and
named a
put a
park
sign
after
on
him.
it.
And then, of course, they put a sign on, right, just to get back at him. So anyway, I'm all for making it as pleasing as possible and effective. I'm wondering about this morning, as you probably heard, a car hit 3 elk right about a quarter-mile west of the Intercept Lot turnoff, the Brush Creek Park and Ride turnoff. And the elk are constantly crossing there on a pretty regular daily basis anyway. And I'm assuming this sign will have elk crossing messages, and we can, so I wanted to ask about discretionary messages. Can we just, like, because I'm the chair, I should be able to put up any message I want in
No,
the morning.
sorry, you can't do that.
And wake up in the morning and say,
Wishful thinking anyway, Greg.
space station flying over, 10 o'clock.
No, those elk were they were trying to catch the bus because we're telling them
You
what
may
to do.
see a coup, but
Keep trying.
I don't
keep
think I
trying.
have the wildlife one. So these are anticipated to be the list that we would submit to CDOT for approval.
Okay, so there probably
I
should
can
be
add the
wildlife notice.
one on here.
Elk crossing area.
So this morning, there was a temporary sign, or it wasn't this morning, it was during the event
Après
at
ski.
Buttermilk.
Weekend, yeah.
So that was farther up, it was up past Smith Hill. It just said event parking next left or something. We could still use those temporary ones closer to the intercept lot if there was a need for some extra messaging, couldn't we?
That would be at
That
CDOT's
wouldn't-
discretion.
Having this wouldn't preclude also using a movable one.
I think you could still use some movable ones.
Right.
I can't really say definitively one way or the other because it would be at CDOT's
Yeah, we
discretion
still
as
use
to
them
whether
coming
they
down
use
Valley
them.
when we have the sign that's just down from Public Works. We still use some movable ones along that section of the road, so.
Got it.
Just line them up.
Okay, so it seems like we have direction here. Are we
Yeah,
good?
so we've got the
We have consensus from this board, that's,
18-foot.
We're good at that.
I know,
All
and
right.
leave it where it is.
18 foot.
Okay. If anything does
Translucent?
change with the city decision, I'll certainly let you know.
All right. Great, thank you. Thanks
thank
for
you.
Thanks.
herding cats.
And may all the patience be with you.
So we'll see you again when? Tomorrow afternoon?
Today's one of these days I just want to like smack.
Well, I
You
ran out
see
of paper.
bruises
We
on
must
your
be done
forehead,
for
we
the
know you
day.
do.
Start to miss you guys.
Remember to keep that wildlife message in there.
Yeah, I'll add that in.
All right.
But face it so the elk know
So
crossing.
the elk can read it. Yeah, so the elk can read it.
Want a pivotal sign so the elk can read it.
Okay, thank you very much. Coming up next, wow, we're 7 minutes ahead of schedule.
Who's counting?
In the queue is Kara again. Haven't we seen you? This is deja
Are you
vu.
guys sick of me yet? I am.
Uh-oh, she's got handouts, so do I.
Uh-oh. There's an elevator phone, if you want.
It occurred to me, Dave, because we're going to be shutting down McLean Flats Road, this sign isn't going to be in place to do anything about that. I think it'll be November for McLean Flats Road before it's finished, right? The sign won't be in about the same, about the same time.
This sign might not be in until next year.
Right, at the rate we're going, right. I just wanted to double check that, but I'm thinking, we need to get smarter on how we communicate with people. A smart highway that told people how long the wait was at Buttermilk Airport. We had kind of had that discussion, but I want to keep that in your mind. There might be ways to alert the commuters just how bad it's going to be, or if we could stagger commute times. So, sorry, back to Kara.
no, but I'm sorry, but Greg, just to your point, we could probably ask CDOT to use the movable electronic sign when the construction starts on McLean Flats Road.
There you go. Right, that
It
may be a
says,
good thing.
Aspen is closed, turn around.
There is a sign going down Smith Way right now.
No,
but
yeah.
not on 82.
On 82, that movable
Oh, on
sign
82,
for,
yeah,
for
we
electronic
have 'em.
message, letting them know that McLean Flats under, whatever, that message.
Well, also on the point, sorry to keep, now that you guys are seated and Dave's still here, the other point was if we could alert commuters and businesses that if they stagger their show-up time by 5 or 10 minutes one way or another, it may actually relieve traffic. They always say a 5% change in it could make a huge difference in your commute. And
Well-
maybe that's a program we could do to relieve the pressure on 82, because there's always a cluster right at 7:45 or whenever it is. Maybe we could all think about other alternate ways to spread the commute out. Just a thought. He's laughing at me.
So where
Anyone
are
who
the
works on Hyman and Hunter comes in at 8. Everyone else comes
Well,
in at
yeah,
8:15 at Hunter.
Not
and
such a bad idea.
Hopkins.
show up 10 minutes early or late, and then it spreads it out. Just a thought.
You're using
So
up
the-
your
the-
7 minutes.
I know, that's my 7 minutes.
Yeah, the question we can answer is where the variable message signs are
Yeah.
though, right now. Do you?
Well, that sign would be instrumental in helping, perhaps. Who knows?
GR, that's you.
Yeah, so my understanding though is actually the sign that's being contemplated by David and through the EOTC is kind of at that placement for optimal to allow the people going into Aspen to know these things. I know some of the other hoops from my understanding that they're jumping through to is making sure that all of the messages have to be pre-approved by CDOT. And so a lot of that kind of plays into how much you can alert to, please don't take McLean Flats might not be one of the things that CDOT will be looking for, but as always, we could always explore those sorts of options.
That's something worth looking at. Thank you. Okay, and here we go.
Are you pulling something?
Legislative update.
Oh, just for breath. Okay. Kara Silbernagel, manager's office. So I'm trying something while losing Alex. It's a little bit of a tail in the dog kind of thing, but what I'm trying for maybe the rest of the session is just to give you guys an update on what I know of things and requests and action that the board has taken and doing follow-up with you guys. And I'll work to try and get this out to you guys electronically in advance. This is my effort to get it to you guys for today. And maybe that's a way that we can kind of track all the action as things move pretty quickly over the next month. So what is before you is there's been in the past, well, I guess since you guys didn't meet last week, there's been a couple requests for action from Pitkin County specifically that I thought you might want to be aware of or talk about. One of them is 1312. It's the immunization bill. It just came out. I think Karen and Public Health is pretty active on it, but just wanted you guys to be aware that it has officially dropped. So we'll see where it goes. So that's.
What do you mean it's been officially
Sorry.
dropped?
The bill was dropped.
It's
was killed?
introduced. Sorry.
It was dropped, it's introduced.
Okay.
Dropped in.
Dropped in the hopper. Dropped in the hopper.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a fact sheet that I'll email this out to you guys afterwards, but there's a fact sheet. So if you guys want any of those talking points or anything, we can share that. The other one that I know that there's been a request from CCI, I think to some folks, is on Senate Bill 222. It's the individuals at risk of institutionalization. Yeah. Say that 5 times fast. It's a behavioral health safety net for that requires providers to serve individuals. I know that Karen has put that on the Board of Health agenda. She has taken a look and does think it's a good bill. CCI's pushing this, so I'm not sure there's action other than I know that there's been conversations about maybe if there's anyone that can testify, and I think Gray as Board of Health has been reached out on that topic. Okay. So we'll continue to track that one. The other one is 1269, which is the Behavioral Health Care Coverage Modernization Act, which is just increasing access to behavioral health services. Again, kind of a big effort that we're seeing across the state, pushing a lot of behavioral cleanup. And that one is kind of lumped, 222 and 1269 are kind of lumped together as companion bills, and so that is set for Board of Health agenda as well. And then the other one that I think all of you may probably have seen requests, they've come from a few different sources that I've seen, is the Mobile Home Park Act Oversight Bill. So this is really being pushed by Boulder County, City of Boulder, that really there hasn't been much enforcement on the Mobile Home Park Act in the past, and so really the only recourse that homeowners have had has been lawsuits. There's not been any actual process that they can do, and so already, homeowners that already vulnerable because they don't own the land can then only typically have been able to file lawsuits against landowners. And I know Patty has some more information, but there has been a request for Pitkin County for a letter of support from
Can I jump
the
in on
county.
that?
Please.
When I was back, when Karen and I were back in Nashville for the I'm Home conference, we did meet a young woman from an organization out of Denver, a 9 to 5. I keep saying 1 to 3, but it's 9 to 5. And she reached out with a draft letter. Kara has reviewed it. We have a paragraph that we would change and tweak to what Pitkin County does as far as our mobile home parks. We preserve them, and just add that in and to back up the safety net for this. I'm supportive of it. We all did get an email from Julie McCluskey asking us for support. So I would like to ask the board if it would be okay for Kara to kind of tweak this letter. I asked for the draft letter because I think it's easier for us when we have a quick turnaround time. If anybody wants it, I made copies. I've also read the act itself and saw how this would fit into the act. I think it's necessary. I think it's needed because it's not, regardless of the lack of enforcement, when homeowners themselves try and take steps, they are, they have no choice. I mean, they are up against all odds. So I think this is beneficial that people actually live in their homes on land that they rent. I think it's protective. And I would just like to see if this board would support doing a letter and having Kara redraft it. If anyone who wants to see it, I think it's this middle paragraph in here that we would
Did
tweak.
you pass it around? Do we have that?
Yeah, I made copies, but I didn't pass them out because I know, George, you want to read it or?
No.
And I will say there's a short turnaround time because the hearing is tomorrow.
Kelly, I have another copy. You guys got it?
You got it.
I also have the bill and I have copies of, but Julie did send us a pretty well-informed email. So that would be great if we could
Comments?
support that.
Any questions? Steve?
I think we should support this. It's like supporting a major affordable housing thing across the whole state.
Actually, this actually would be also reinforced at the federal level with I'm Home Now program is a federal issue based out of Washington, D.C., and they're looking for legislation to start at the local level and go to the state and then hit the federal government. So it's a huge stepping stone.
Yeah, and it might not affect us that much directly right here in our own county, but
Good to be
it's
supportive.
like giving support. I mean, we do have our mobile home parks in Pitkin County and, various
Outlying.
forms of ownership and whatnot, but.
Kelly, what's your feeling?
Yeah,
You-
supportive.
Okay, George? Are you
No, that's fine,
Okay
yeah.
with it?
Great,
Okay, I
thank
think
you.
we're
Thanks, guys, appreciate it.
great. Thank you.
I will follow up with Julie and with the young woman from 9 to 5.
Okay, perfect. The other one coming back from earlier this morning is on the census outreach grant program. So the request is for $12 million, and the estimate is that those appropriations will be reduced. CCI is in support of it, and I think they're active on it. So just wanted to loop you guys back on that element.
Great.
And if you want to change $6 million of election omnibus funding for census, I'll let you guys handle that one. But on the election omnibus bill, as you guys probably are aware, it did pass out of the House. There were amendments to it. Kelly can probably speak to it much better than I can, but I do know one thing is Janice was going to get estimates for what those amendments, how that would change the fiscal impact and the mandates for the county. And we haven't gotten those estimates yet.
What was the first run around? I heard there was some first numbers,
6 million. And it'd
To
be
Pitkin
about
County, no?
50,000. About 50,000
About 50?
for Pitkin.
Per year, right?
Yeah. I think, hopefully not per election, because we have a lot of election. We have 3 elections next year.
I think I saw 50,000 per November election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Election.
But can I,
Go ahead.
Kelly, wasn't there also concern about our abilities of small communities, first of all, that don't have the funds, but second of all, that don't have the physical bodies to have the judges and be open, some places that aren't even open 5 days a week, let alone 7 days a week, and that the bill has no waivers, exemptions, percentages. If you're already doing X, why do you have to do X percent more above? Is that kind of what you're hoping that?
Well, I think that's where the bill currently still stands. Some of those points are what the clerks were raising as to potential amendments. The amendments that I read to the bill didn't actually address any of those points. So from what I understand, there continues to not be any waiver or hardship or success language that would say if your county's already has 90% turnout, you're exempt or anything like that. I have a lot of concerns knowing this field intimately, but, it will create a whole lot more slots for them to recruit for election judges. And, we might be able to successfully do that from the Democratic Party, but I'm not sure we will be able to match that with equal recruitment success from the Republican Party. And, that concerns me because I think the fact that our elections have been bipartisan is a real asset to this community, and something that builds faith in the integrity of the election process. So, none of the amendments addressed are really getting to the functional difficulties of this bill.
So how can we help support those amendments that would make sense at this point, or is the point not there yet, or?
I do, we've submitted comments. I spoke with Representative McCluskey and reiterated concerns with her last week. And I know that the clerks are continuing to be part of the stakeholder group addressing that. So, I think just continued outreach with Representative McCluskey and Senator Donovan would be helpful.
Because this is being moved forward by the new Secretary of State, correct?
Well, with her support.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's critical we
So
follow
do we
this
need
one
to
closely.
Send another letter, or if we've done that so recently, it's not.
So hopefully you'll be down there next week. You two will be in Denver Thursday, Friday? Okay.
And CCI, reached out to all their membership and asked for very similar outreach. It is an unfunded mandate at this point.
Great.
So I'm not sure.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly.
After talking to Janice Voss-Caudill, she says and I agree, we have a great system right now that's working really well. And then this is trying to change it and doing this financial burden on the local governments. If we have a good system working right now and we have the fourth lowest wait times in the whole country already for voters, why change it? And that makes me inclined to want to just oppose this bill completely.
As it's currently written, or even at the end of the day.
If it's truly improving things and not costing people a lot of money to do it, and I mean the governments, then I'd be in favor of that. But we've improved the system we have, so why change it at this point?
Okay, so does that include action on our part, or are we going to monitor this and see what shakes out with amendments? Or do we want to write a letter?
I thought we already did write a letter.
We wrote one.
I think we just let
Just
Kelly and Steve work their
recently,
magic on Thursday and Friday.
Okay, so we don't have to take action, we're just going to let
Let's
you.
wait for the amendments to come out and see what they are before deciding anything.
Yeah, I think it's helpful that, this is a flagship issue for progressives, and I just think what's difficult here is that, it's hard to appear as if you don't support voter enfranchisement, and that's the political element of this, and me being, a Democrat and a progressive does support voter enfranchisement, but this bill doesn't address true problems in making the system better. So, I would
Better go
like
with the
for the
values.
clerks' suggestions to be heeded and considered because they are the experts of their offices and have made some very good suggestions to making this a practical, piece of legislation. So.
Okay, next.
All right, we'll keep these moving. We'll let them work their magic in Denver. The other one, just as follow-up, is Senate Bill 188. It's the family leave program. That one got caught up because the business communities were pushing for some big amendments. So there's a big overhaul of amendments that I honestly have not even had a chance to look through completely yet to understand how it impacts the county. So we'll be looking at those amendments and following through. But there is now a local government opt-out option, which is why a lot of counties were not willing to support this. So maybe with that opt-out option, more counties will jump in and support it. So to be continued on that one. We're not sure if the opt-out option, how then it gets paid for, which is the other trade-off. So more to come on that one. Let's see, the reinsurance program. A lot of changes have happened to it, and I think the biggest one is that the federal government said that they would not award the waiver, so basically how it was going to be paid for was no longer possible. So the bill sponsors have worked with the Colorado Hospital Association to come up with now hospital fees will pay for it. There's a whole write-up that maybe someone can understand. And so I know that Kelly was able to have a conversation on the topic, and I'm waiting to get in contact with Dave Ressler from Aspen Valley to see how those amendments impact their perspective. You guys had directed to write a letter. We've kind of been waiting to see what happens. So once we circle back with Dave and see those impacts, then assuming it's on the right page, can write that letter now that it's passed out of the Senate and is passed out of the House and is headed to the Senate. And
I'll
Kelly.
just contribute a few more points. So, the amendments that have taken shape would allow for exemptions of critical access facilities, which I understand from Dave includes Aspen Valley, and would likely not include Valley View. So some of the exemption language has expanded to include them, which I think is positive. The Hospital Association, from what I understand from Representative McCluskey, has moved to neutral on this bill, which I regard as success. And they've included language to do a 2-year study on looking at kind of any unintended consequences that this might have on hospitals in terms of like payer mix and ability to maintain, revenue percentages. Things like that.
So a 2-year study before they enact it, or a 2-year study
After.
while it's going on? Okay.
Yep. So I'm hopeful ABH, is satisfied with that, because I really still continue to like for us to support this. I know we support reinsurance. The actuarial studies have indicated that a family of 4 on a silver level plan on the market could save $8,600 a year.
Which is
That's
significant.
substantial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So you might see a letter coming out on that. And then the last one is, this one has been a CCI priority. I've been working on it for a while. It's the broadband deployment using electrical easements. That one has been in the mix. There's actually been a complete rewrite of the bill, which, depending on that rewrite, actually might switch CCI to an opposed position. So Kelly and Steve, so you're aware of that. It's industry more or less got their hands on the bill and is changing it. So I know that CCI is working with the stakeholder group and with the bill sponsor, Senator Donovan, to work through and see where that lands. But just want to keep you guys updated on that one.
Thank you. That's great. Steve?
The House Bill 1261, which is the big climate bill, I think is an important one. CC4CA is strongly supporting it. It passed the House committee on party line votes on April 5th. The fact that it's on party line votes indicates to me that the Republicans are probably fighting it because it has the name climate in it. And it also means that in the Senate, where the Democrats just hold a slim majority, it's going to have a harder time getting through the Senate. in its present form anyhow. So I think that's one that we need to keep on your radar, and if there's any opportunities for any of us to go testify, especially I think when it gets to the Senate, that we should try to do that.
Great. Yes, thank you. That one, and I know that other one, CC4CA is pretty active that I didn't have a chance to update with, and maybe you guys know, is the greenhouse gas inventory is also a big one, so I'll add that to the tracking.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, great. We got it.
Thank you.
Well done.
I'll send this to you electronically so you guys have all the hyperlinks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving
Kara.
on to board open discussion. And
Yeah, I'd like to start off with GR. We have some guidance that we want to get vis-a-vis rebudgeting for 2019.
Yes, thanks, Board. I'm G.R. Fielding, the county engineer again. And so we'd like to move some projects along with the funding scheme that utilizes our road and bridge carry forwards. And typically the carry forwards come in before the board in a little while. I think it's next month that they come forward. But to be able to move some of the projects forward now, we wanted to get a comfort level with the board over how we're going to be moving the road and bridge funds over from 2018 into 19. So just 2 seconds on budget process. Typically, we're here in the fall and the winter to present our budget for the next year. We try to make it a point to discuss what we already know is going to be carry forwards. And so a lot of times during our presentations, that's one of the bullet points that we talk around. But that doesn't get cooked into that budget until later in the year. And then later in the year, you guys will see supplemental requests. And one of the reasons that I'm here now is so that we can do this a little bit before that and get some of these projects done before the timeline for things like carry forwards would allow. A couple weeks ago, we talked about a number of different projects. That was a little bit of scratching the surface on each one of them. Mountain Valley, we have out, and we're not anticipating our bids in until May 8th at this point. We were going to have our bids in earlier, but because of the level of snow, the contractors couldn't get a good look at the project. And the one thing that we don't want to cook into a project is unknown, because then they just throw big bucks at us. And so we moved that back. Ideally, I would know that at this point. But our engineer's estimate and our budget are pretty close on that project. Really, the thing that I want to talk about is our soil nail walls on Jerboz and Maroon Creek. Between the 2 years worth of budgets, what we had left over from last year from the design phase, and then what we had budgeted this year, we have about $285,000. To get the project done, we would need a whole budget of somewhere around $455,000. That includes the bids that we got in, contingency, testing, and inspection. All of that is fully cooked into that $455,000. We have a big block wall that we've talked about that we got numbers in that we would need about $125,000 to complete. From 2018, we had project savings from a number of different projects. Thompson Creek Road, since we did that in-house, we had significant savings. Our contingency as a carry forward. Red Mountain Road, we finished up some retaining walls up there. We have some savings from that. Structural maintenance, we had some savings from that last year in the projects that we finished, and we have a couple others. Moving all of that forward, if we were to fully fund everything that we know right now, it would leave us about $24,000 in savings still in the road and bridge budget. It's getting a little bit thinner than I'm usually comfortable with. And so what we're thinking is to fund the $455,000 soil nail wall and push back the big block wall into either a fall project or until such time when we know where we're going to be coming in with some things that are a little bit higher priority. And then the other caveat to all of this is that a big part of our budget this year is eaten up by the Castle Creek Bridge, which we're not going to actually construct this year. We have $1.5 million in this year. And because of the grant process that we went through, we're not going to end up scratching any dirt until 2020. We wanted to be able to show the budget so we can apply for more grants and also go out to bid, if possible, in 19 to kick off the 2020 process early. And so we do have a few things that give me a little bit more comfort in managing the budget. So between the, pushing the big block wall schedule back and the knowing that we have the Castle Bridge and then the other 24,000, I would feel comfortable moving forward with the 455,000 funded in large part by the savings from the 2018 projects.
George?
Refresh my memory. Where's the soil nail walls on Maroon Creek and the big block wall on Maroon Creek?
So the soil nail wall is a couple tenths of a mile past Highlands. As you're going down the hill before you cross the bridge, there's a rather large subsidence that you drive across right now. It looks like a big smiley face on the surface, and that's what they call the headscarp. The big block wall is about probably a couple tenths of a mile below T-Lazy 7. Next to, there's a pretty large over-steepened bank that goes down to Maroon Creek there. And there's just a couple areas where we've started to see some of the shoulder ravel away.
Oh, okay.
I was going to
So
ask that too.
that big block wall would be down below the road.
That's correct.
To support the road.
Yes.
Or actually, both of those projects are all to help hold the road in place.
Yes.
And Jerboz is down the hill before the bridge on the right-hand side of the road.
If you're coming from 82, it's on your left.
Oh, it's on the other side.
So it's just
I know where it is, where the guardrail that you showed us, the guardrail dips.
Yes, and it's there's a very modern house and garage, right?
Tucked
The
down.
garage is kind of like pretty close to the road right there.
Like on the
It's
road.
yeah, it's just above that. And so this would allow us, I guess this funding scheme would allow us to keep a little bit of powder dry in case something like, I would definitely prioritize Mountain Valley above the big block wall in Maroon Creek. It's not like the road's falling away right now. It's a very slow process. And so I'd rather get our maintenance done and keep that 125 in the budget, be able to put that to Mountain Valley if we don't get as favorable bids as we're expecting.
I don't see any problem.
Okay.
Regarding the soil nails, I'm thinking about, I was driving down Smith Hill Way this weekend, and there was actually a guy out there with a truck picking rock out of the face of the hillside with a crowbar. And I thought, is that a county truck? And I realized later it wasn't.
The construction
I
company
think it's
needs
somebody
rock
looking
wall
for some
some-
rock for a garden or something, but I'm
There's-
just wondering what kind of outreach do we do so people realize that's not probably a good idea.
Yeah, well, right now we're without a enforcement officer as far as I know. Over the years, can't tell you how many times I've stopped. I can think of 3 or 4 off the top of my head and asked people to move along from down the bottom of the hill from harvesting rocks. While it saves us a little tiny bit of work from ditching, it's not done with traffic control, and it's usually not done in the safest manner. But yeah, we do see that a lot of people harvesting rocks for construction projects, landscaping projects.
Right. Out of the gutter is one thing, but picking them out of the wall, to me, that just seemed
You're going
like
to end up with a rock on your head.
yeah, super dangerous and moving the process along.
Yeah, GR, I support your recommendations. I think just leaving 24,000 in the fund balance is way too slim. Let's do the one project and sort of see how the year goes and where we're at this coming fall.
We can always find something for you to do.
Sounds right.
We're not for lack of work right now, Patty.
Plenty to do, plenty to do. Yeah.
Okay.
All righty.
Thank you.
Just regarding all the avalanche accumulation in the upper, have you been up in Conundrum and scouted that whole thing out?
I was up there the week after the avalanche. We did a little bit of scouting when I was up there. I was actually up there with one of the structural engineers from SGM that we work with a lot to discuss a couple of the dynamics up there, because that was pretty interesting to us. It's going to be a while before we refined portions of that last little stretch of road from the house up to the trailhead. That's for sure. I have not been up Maroon Creek personally. We've taken a lot of looks at the social media photos that have been put out, and from my understanding, there's 50 feet plus of snow and debris in some areas. A couple of the other things that we've talked about with Road and Bridge is that because so much tree and avalanche debris has come down with a lot of the avalanches, that we might be expecting more snags this year to be coming and floating down the river. And so our guys are becoming very, very well trained in stopping at a lot of the bridges when they're out on the road checks and taking a look over the railing and seeing what's going on. Maroon Creek is actually at the bridge just up from where the soil nails are, is one of the places that we have to clear every couple years because of how many snags come down that section of river.
Right, good point. So the snags on the bridge abutments and other spots, also just the amount of down timber, it's probably going to be across the road and in the ditches and everywhere. It's going to be interesting when all that melts out in August.
See what's there.
Whenever it will be. September. Yeah, okay.
All right, well thank you, Board. I appreciate your direction.
Thank you.
So
Rolling with that.
Can I
Okay.
do two real quick open
Yeah.
discussion? I think we've all been contacted or have talked about supporting Ed Vardy for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. He's been nominated, now he has to go through confirmation from the state senate. I have a draft letter here. I would like to see if the board is willing to support a draft letter supporting Ed for this position to represent. Steve looked up the positions on CPW, and Eden would be a good fit for this, and I think it'd be nice to have some young, sustainable farming experience and knowledge and passion on CPW. So I wanted to see if the board would support moving this letter of support for Eden forward.
I haven't seen the letter. I mean, I support
Eden, but I haven't seen the letter.
This is just a real draft.
Got it.
I made copies.
Yeah. I get these emails. I'm a Holy Cross Cattlemen's member, and they've been doing an email campaign against the appointment of Eden to the commission because they use the word, this is the landowner position on the Parks and Wildlife Commission, and actually it's a production agricultural position. There says nothing about a landowner being the qualification for filling that position on the board. So I think the Holy Cross Cattlemen would love to see just a rancher with a big ranch who is a hunter and allows hunting on their place and that sort of thing to be on the commission. And so they are kind of mounting a campaign against Eden. So I think he would provide a good counterpoint to production agriculture as like the new alternative agriculture that's, smaller scale, locally produced food kind of a thing is, I think, an important part of agriculture, and it should be represented on the board also.
So this
on the
was
Wildlife Commission.
This letter was, I asked Ed and I said, just draft us a really quick letter so we have something to go off. I know, again, how important it is for us to get letters turned around quickly and how it's helpful for staff if we have something to go with. So this is like a first blush attempt, and I think we can fine tune it if the board is willing to supporting Ed.
Yeah, I'm good.
I don't know him, but I always think having Roaring Fork Valley and Pitkin County representatives on these statewide commissions is always an asset.
I would agree. With a little tweaking, I think this would be
Yeah, I'll
fine.
give it to Kara and have her. Do you want to work with Kara on that, or?
I could do that, certainly. And I think Steve's point that it does seem like they're trying to weigh it in favor of a certain variety of big-time rancher. And what we're talking about is production agriculture, and we've got a young, incredibly effective and passionate, talented guy who's willing to come on and bring a new perspective. So maybe he's a bit of an outlier, but I think he'd be a breath of fresh air. And I really want to make sure we say that we really we're thrilled with the governor's nomination. So
Yeah, if you just want to take that draft and work with it, that'd be great.
We'll do it. Okay.
I have
So
one
that's a
other
yes.
quick thing. This is Northwest COG Regional Economic Summit. It's coming up on Thursday, May 2nd. I will be going because I vice chair the Economic Development District. If anybody is, I'll maybe have Charlotte send it out to you. There's a great list of speakers. It's going to be well attended. So if anybody is interested, I'm going over the night before because I have to be there early to set the room up. But that's what the vice chair gets to do. So if it's okay, I'll have her send it out to anybody, just so you can all look and see who the speakers are.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And Steve, just back, one quick step back to Eden's letter. You mentioned that there's a lobbying effort in favor of a landowner. So they're misinterpreting the title of the position. I think we should include that in this letter. If that that's how I
Why
understand
don't you
it.
guys work together and
Yeah.
craft a good letter and,
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing
Okay,
to
just want to make sure that's where we're
Yeah,
going with this.
I think that's
Okay,
great.
Great, and then we can send that off later on.
thank you.
Thank you.
One small item, I got an email from Parks and Wildlife regarding the basalt shooting range task force meeting. Did the rest of you get the same email?
I did.
Inviting us to go to their meeting on April 23rd.
That's a
in
Tuesday, I
Carbondale.
believe, a Tuesday, 5 p.m.
5:15 to 6. I was just curious if everybody had gotten the same email, and it's sort of more of a basalt issue, but it could, I mean, if they decide to possibly move a shooting range somewhere else, then that could impact us. And
Well, and it'd just be good for us to know if more than two of you are going to potentially attend.
Right. I was
I'm-
concerned about our Tuesday afternoon. That's a Tuesday.
Oh.
So we may not be done in time to even get there before it's over. It ends at 6, I think, or 6:15.
it starts at 5:15, but we might want to spring
Carbondale.
one person loose to go to it also.
Yeah, I'm not
Having
planning
somebody
to.
there makes sense.
I think it would make sense to have somebody go just to kind of represent the board and to be on a fact finding to
I could certainly
learn what
go
they've done.
unless there's a reason to send staff. I could do it. You can probably fly without me for the last
And I wouldn't mind
hour of the day.
going
Or
down
Steve can
here
go.
since
We let Kelly run the
in
meeting.
that direction.
Exactly.
Took away our opportunity last week.
Oh, really? Darn.
I was
Okay.
strategic. No.
Yeah. Anything else for open discussion?
Did we decide which one of you is going?
They sound like they both
I think
want to
Steve's
go.
going.
I was kind of
I'd
looking
be
at
glad to
George,
go.
but you know.
I mean, I'd be more,
Sorry.
basalt's my town, really.
I think you're going, Steve.
Went to
Okay.
school and
Okay.
everything, so I-
Sorry.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. All
You're
right.
going, John.
Yeah, you're
I don't.
already. All right, then, I think we need a motion to go into executive session. Can we do that?
Open a special meeting, open and go into
Special
executive
meeting,
session, so
executive
moved.
session. Oh, here it is.
For the purposes of,
Purposes of personnel litigation, Pitkin Park Place Housing Unit, Airport Restaurant Contract, key litigation, amicus brief, assessor land classification case, WOTUS comments, waters of the United States, all pursuant to CRS 246-4024B. Do I have a motion?
I moved.
Second?
And a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we're in executive session. Thanks, Grassroots. We're out of here.
Thank you.